technical difficulties.
That just means you gotta look on the bright
This time
side.
it's
You
my
get
fault,
two
though.
in July, technically.
I know this is like a 4th of July stream. We should have had
You guys can hear it
Little
actually, never mind.
fireworks and
yeah,
it's a
exactly.
celebration.
Need to change it.
just
Let me
explode
edit.
some money. Obviously, you see
Hey, back.
he's joining us for this little special
It's-
one,
it's
and he's
been a
wearing
little
some
while.
Ashes merch. You're gonna make everyone jelly.
Yes, looking good.
Yeah, you can
There we
see
go.
some of the
All right,
behind
camera will
scenes
be up in a
well,
minute.
but,
I just need to get some shit
as a
ready.
little
Mer.
sneak peek, we are working on merchandise. We know that we've been getting a lot of people
One
asking us
moment.
for it. It takes time. You have to go through manufacturing, and you have to find the right people that you want. You have to get all your designs ready, and then it's back and forth getting samples.
And then you have to have our models in-house like Brian that's testing everything.
Yeah, you gotta
Yeah.
like
That's right.
pose for us. But yeah, so we'll just get right into all of the goodness. But as you can see below us, what we're going to be covering today is reminders, server meshing technology, studio update, art update, and we'll have some Q&A from the forums. We'll also be pulling some live questions as well, as we usually do after the server meshing technology stuff. So stay tuned for that.
I'm curious how they're going to show
Before we
us.
begin those things, we have a
Or server
quick
meshing.
reminders. And the first one here is, of course, our YouTube Spotlight. And if you would like to be spotlighted for our YouTube Spotlight, all you have to do is subscribe to us over on
I've
YouTube.
seen,
Make sure that you are your subscription shows publicly. It's a little weird thing. And leave a comment on our development update, the full development update, and you could be chosen for next month. So this one is from Kevin, and they would like to know, love the vid. Are there any plans in the future of making skills that require team effort, like 10 summoner players in a guild sacrificing 50% of their HP to summon a giant golem that can break down walls and gates and sieges,
Ends up playing a little bit too much
or
Throne of Liberty.
act as a front to block damage from enemy arrows? Maybe 10 mages sacrificing 50% of their mana to cast an ice storm in certain area that significantly reduces movement speed, which can be used on holding down choke points. That was a lot. They had some animation go into that one.
I mean, regardless of the specific examples there, right? I think that the crux of the question is, do we intend for there to be synergy between multiple archetypes or different archetypes in skill activation? And I think we've talked about this in the past.
Yes,
We gave an
but maybe not
example.
on that
Actually, I think
scale.
I heard a golem in this example, but
Yeah.
we gave an example of summoners summoning using combined powers to summon a larger golem. There is a desire to explore that path. I think our ability system facilitates that already. One of the things that we look at, like right now with the current archetypes for A2, there's a wall ability on the tank. It'd be nice that as you're in a party or in a raid, you as a tank have the option to set on that ability whether or not you want that wall to connect with others, so that it snaps to another wall, potentially creating a stronger barrier. Those types of interactions I think are interesting. I think they're cool. I know the combat team thinks they're interesting and cool. We definitely want to aim for that being a potential.
So maybe not
right now that hasn't yet been implemented.
The way he's saying it, but maybe if you were to cast the same spell in an area,
Really
you could link it together, like piling on ice storms to create like a bigger one, and like the radius gets bigger and bigger as more get piled on.
Wrapping up the siege
up to a point.
So if you have any feedback on that one, definitely go over there. But right now we have
It's
camera
dynamic.
perspectives
I like
up,
it.
which we want to know about camera perspectives. What camera perspectives do you prefer in terms of both angle and distance from your character? Do you?
This is a weird dev
do
discussion.
different situations call for different?
I saw it on
perspectives?
Twitter
Let
when they
us
first
know.
put it
And of
up,
course,
but
our next one coming up after that will be storytelling with archetypes. And as we've alluded in the past already, there's some bard action coming up in the future. So we know folks are excited for that coming up.
I don't know. What's interesting? Sorry, just
if people really have strong feelings about
that question.
I mean, having the option for first person is always good.
A long time ago,
but then
had a
medium distance from the character's nice. I guess
3 different types of wizards. One was wind, one was water,
I have no strong
and the
feelings
other was
on
fire. And they each had an elemental infusion that you could cast on another wizard of a different type.
Oh, I know what game you're talking about.
Yeah.
I like that game.
And if you did cast it, there was like a 10 to 20 minute long cooldown on the infusion, but it powered them up to do a mega like nuke, right, on
Yeah.
a target. Now, I didn't find the efficacy of that, to be anything particularly game changing. It was a kind of nifty gimmick for a single nuke. But like, what did that do in the long run of me constantly casting my normal nuke over and over and over
Before they
again,
get
right?
to their
But I thought it was
showcase.
an interesting attempt at creating some interclass dependencies or synergy from a party perspective with those classes. And if you dive a little bit deeper into that, maybe you can come up with some fun, regular moment to moment gameplay.
100%.
Yeah.
And with that, we move
I hope that
into
he doesn't go too hard on that
our
idea.
server meshing technology. This
I
is
want
going
the
to be a
game,
long
man. Come
1
on.
hour and 18-minute segment.
My lifetime.
Yes.
So buckle in. If I told everybody in the beginning, I was in chat, I was like, get your snacks ready because you're gonna maybe take a pee
For
break
sure.
now.
And as we were talking through this, and Brian and I have talked about this in the past as well, you really kind of have to
I'm up
wonder
early today, but I took my shower a
what
little late.
segment of our
So,
community
a
is interested
little-
in this depth of a technical
Clearly, this is why
discussion.
we're here. We
Right.
told them
Let's
in
double check
advance
this.
what's coming. We're like, this is going to be very nerdy talk. Prepare
It's a
yourself.
super nerd thing. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh,
it
it's
is
a
a super
little off.
nerd thing. And to be honest with you,
Little misaligned.
it's not what your general population cares to see at all, right? They want to see
Fine.
the
We'll figure it out.
gameplay, they want to
I'll play
feel the
later.
gameplay, they want to talk about that. And that's like, if you think about the ratio
Oh, I hate that it does
of
that.
streams that we
Checking this.
do, what is gameplay versus technical discussions?
We do
Maybe it's
mostly
like a 1 to
gameplay,
10, right? It's like, it's like a
Yeah.
1 to 10, or
Oh,
every
I
10 or
forgot that
so
happens.
streams, we have a super
Hey,
in-depth,
Google, how's it going?
technical discussion. This one, let me preface, is going to be the most technically oriented discussion we have ever done as a live stream.
Well, we made our lovely Mike Vecchio, our graphics designer, made some great imagery to help you
I thought it was
understand
phenomenal.
things.
Yeah.
So hopefully
Great.
you won't be
It's an
too
insult.
bored visually either.
I thought it was phenomenal, but let me just speak to this. There is a lot of magic that goes on behind the scenes of what makes these kinds of games possible.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of individuals who are not the VFX artists, who are not the combat designers, but who are in the literal weeds of the deepest code possible. That is so nuanced and complicated that it is, without a degree in this specific field, you really have a very difficult time even following along. So I would just want to give kudos to the guests that we had on this particular live stream, Zach, Hunter, Anton. They did a phenomenal job, I think, even with the visual aid that Vecchio did, which he did a great job with, in kind of walking through from a layman's perspective just the level of complexity that's necessary, and also the magic that we're brewing up here at Intrepid, because that magic's going to be on full display for Alpha 2. You guys are going to be experiencing it, and without an in-depth showcase like the one you're about to have, you would have no idea of what's going on in the background. It would just feel like seamless gameplay to you. But there is really,
if the PI folks, because the PI folks,
it better be seamless though, because the Star Citizen one wasn't very seamless.
What was going on behind the scenes?
It was very cool, but not seamless.
Server meshing technology isn't just something we're talking about today. It exists in the game, and they experienced it. So,
and we've been working on for years now, right? So. I think
That's
they
good
do, because sometimes as an individual server worker
didn't want to be some half-assed.
Why did I get disconnected?
Oh God, Star Citizen did it. Now we got to do it. I was really hoping that wasn't going to be the case.
It's the same technology. For sure.
Yeah.
Not something I follow very closely.
These guys were so
follow
excited,
very closely
they
in
were
general.
like, we could have talked even
Server
longer.
technologies.
Oh yeah, for sure. This is a total nerdgasm area.
Mhm.
But let me say this. So as a preface, before we get into this is going to be up on YouTube afterwards. We're going to post it there. It's a standalone discussion.
Smelly coffee.
Like Margaret said, hour 18 minutes. This is very in-depth technical discussions. We're going to answer some questions afterwards, so make sure you guys are posting. Margaret's going to be watching. Feedback points
necessarily only. We have our wonderful community team and
If you're
social
wondering
team
what the fuck
that
I'm doing,
will be grabbing questions from all the places.
had a bad
Absolutely. So
experience of
make
putting
sure
the
as you
cream
guys are
in
watching
my
this,
coffee first and it
the
curdling
types of
as the
questions
hot
we would
coffee
love to
touches
hear
it.
from you is,
Um,
how are these types of technical discussions
so
received by our
I put it
audience?
in a
Do you
fucking
enjoy
cup
them?
to
Do
bring
you
it
like
along
getting a
with
look
me.
under the hood? Try to formulate,
Scoffed, I
types of
know,
questions
but
you can better understand it. Margaret and the community team will capture them. We'll answer them afterwards. But please
you
understand,
while I stir this
everything
so I don't
here
get to
continues to be a
clink
work in
the glass
progress.
in your eardrums.
All of the conversations that we're having about this technology is what's going to be tested as part of Alpha 2. And sit back and enjoy an insight to
I will
what
enjoy.
most companies really do do not ever reveal about what's under the hood.
But you know,
All
there's some
right.
fairness in that.
Time to
You know
get
what?
nerdy.
Maybe we
See
don't
y'all on the flip
give them
side.
too much shit about how it looks yet. But I am weary. So the server meshing technology for Star Citizen, one of the issues that I have with it is that you could see where the mesh was happening, and I mean they were showing it, so it's a lot more noticeable. But like there was some clear
Hello,
issues
everyone. Welcome to
with
our
it.
glorious server mesh technology showcase segment.
Exciting.
It is. I'm Margaret Crone, your director of communications, and of course, with me as always,
We're gonna
is
try it at 100 and
Steven
see how that
Treat, our
goes. Let me know if
wonderful
it's too
creative
loud.
director.
I'm excited. We have a fun showcase today. I mean,
Ooh, let me do
this
it.
is something that I don't think a lot of companies go into. A lot of projects don't really talk about,
That should be
you know, it
fine.
can be a little bit on the techie side, but I think this is stuff that a lot of players like hearing about. And I know we got some exciting
I don't know if
people
I
to chat
necessarily
with
care to
today.
hear about it,
Yeah,
but like,
and of course, we tried to make it as visually appealing as possible. Shout out to Mike Vecchio, as you
Great work.
may know him from all of our other graphics, but he's our graphics designer, and he did a wonderful job on these slides. So hopefully they help portray what our wonderful engineering team is trying to showcase. So we will
fix the fucking
introduce them. We
lamps.
have some new people who you've never met before. We'll kick it off first with Zach. If you want to talk about who you are, what you do at the studio, and maybe a little fun fact.
Hi guys, I'm Zach. I'm the technical director here.
Hi Zach.
At Intrepid Studios. I run the networking team and the engine team. I'm generally responsible for performance and making sure that the game scales to the amount of players that we want it to.
A hefty and lofty goal. Many of us players will have thoughts on that. And of course, we have Hunter with us.
We have a name.
Hang out on our Discord.
I know who to bitch at on Twitter when the servers go down unexpectedly.
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. My name's Hunter. I am a game networking engineer at Intrepid Studios. I've been here for almost about 4 years now, and first initially started off as a gameplay engineer, and then I slowly worked my way over to networking because that's what I've come to find that I love, and I love solving the hard problems, and very excited to showcase to y'all what we've been working on.
The gameplay engineering just wasn't torture enough for Hunter, so he wanted to go straight into the fire.
Impossible problems.
Oh my God.
I like solving problems like this, hard problems.
Yeah, okay.
I think solving problems is fun. Yeah. And then of course,
are they
last
actually
but
going
not
to show
least,
us anything?
Anton.
Hello, I'm Anton. I'm a senior networking engineer over here at Intrepid. I moved straight into this position because, I wanted to suffer immediately. I didn't want to start with a gameplay.
Okay.
All right.
Answers my question.
Well, let's kick it off, Zach. I think you have a little intro here for us as we move in.
Yeah.
So Zach, just to start, a lot of people, sometimes don't know what networking is.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what is networking. What is a network layer?
At its core, networking is just the concept of moving a state from the server to the clients. That at its core, that is the problem we are trying to solve. We are trying to do that as fast as possible with as many players as possible.
Your screen's gonna go black for a second.
Since we are making a very, very large game, we have a lot of problems that most games don't usually have.
I'll pull some other monitors so I can look at it if I need
to.
Yeah,
and with regards to like an MMORPG versus like a peer-to-peer versus like a small dedicated server, like our networking needs are intense because
they're very
the types of numbers we're looking at are extreme.
Tree gets the pings in my server, so I just messaged him directly.
Everyone on the network has worked on other multiplayer games before, and this is definitely the project where we have to get the most creative with how we are going to solve
normally stream this early.
Our scaling
All guys are
problems.
usually asleep or still in their day.
We are working on an MMO. Most MMOs don't do what we're about to do here. They don't talk about how they made it so they can support thousands of players per server. So it's very much we have to kind of like figure out what has been done and do a lot of R&D to figure out what we need to do for our game.
Right. And kind of answering that question of what we need to do for our game starts out with, well, what is our game trying to achieve, right?
Yes. Yeah.
There are a lot of different types of MMOs, some that heavily, utilize instancing,
Yes.
some that, maybe don't care about replicating to hundreds of players at a given time.
Like
so first it starts with a vision. What is Ashes of Creation? And then that kind of leads you down the architectural path of, okay, what does that mean we have to set up?
Exactly.
Because this isn't out of the box Unreal Engine 5.
But they use
this is a custom network layer.
Yeah, this is fully custom, tailor-made for the needs that Ashes has. Like, this is not, none of this is off the shelf. None of this is standard Unreal. This is all built for the kind of game that we are making.
I like that.
Right.
Because that's a criticism that a lot of people have. So how do you go about kind of,
determining that architecture?
What does that look like? Using the out of the box shit.
And we've been working on this for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, we already knew that they weren't doing
so I guess
that, but it's just good to hear it every once in a while.
We need to figure out the requirements. Like, what do we actually
day one, they said that they were working on their own back end. This must be what they meant.
The first place we start is, we're an open world PvP game, so we can't really control where players go. We can't do typical matchmaking where we just, spin up more servers, put them on the new matchmaking servers and, not have these issues. We're an open world game. Anyone can go anywhere. We're a highly PvP game, so we need to have low latency. People can't just we can't do what other games do.
They're already beating the Korean MMOs
really
with that
low,
one.
And then
they know we need low latency. They don't give a shit.
Simulate at a really, really low rate. Since we're action PvP, we can't do that.
And I'm not talking about playing across the water.
Would you call this a game design pillar, Stephen? Like,
they're localized.
We know that we don't want to do layering. Like, that's a very
absolutely.
Or have
game thing. We wanted so
shit
you can
server
go
locations
anywhere
or
in the
shit
world,
servers.
stand there, and the people who are there are there. Like,
yeah. And I was just gonna say, game layering. Obviously, everyone on this call is a gamer who's played MMOs, and we played games that do layering.
Yep.
It's
just a very different experience when you can switch channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like
so
a
the
world.
BDO, the Maple Stories,
a core,
the so
MMO memory for me is
I get it. Okay.
You would go to the same place.
I had to say it aloud before I understood, but.
And there would be the same person there, dancing on top of a mailbox every single time.
Or dancing on top of a corpse and looking at you with hungry eyes.
And they were always there. And they were always there. And with layering,
these
you don't
guys
get that.
camped out at Goldshire one too many times.
That same level of experience that we want to give
or
to our players. And then I guess our last requirement, which is just a typical MMO requirement, is that we have very, very high player count goals. And typically high player count goals with no layering don't really go together.
Yeah,
so
right,
that's where it comes into we need to get really creative with how we're going to solve these problems.
And some of us, Hunter, Anton, we've played these games that have high player counts, but a lot of ways that they get around having higher player counts is by being less server adjudicated, less server authoritative, and more player, which has its own risks and isn't really preserving the integrity of that player experience.
Like BDO.
Indeed. Some
he won't say it, but I'll say it for him. Like BDO.
Do proper physics simulations on the server side to validate player movements.
Some of those bigger node wars probably makes your computer want to reach out and strangle you.
Right.
And then the game just makes people invisible, and then it's just disgusting.
Well, I guess they do layering or sharding where they have real high player counts, but technically not really, because they're kind of broken up.
I can't tell you how many times I've jumped into either some session-based game, or I don't want to call any of them out, but where there's just one single player that's either hacking or doing something, and they're just running around and ruining the experience for everyone. And it's because
World of
the
Warcraft.
way they've architected in such a way, it's easier for those types of experiences to occur.
Always trust the client, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You just made everyone sweat, Hunter.
Do we want to kind of transition
World of Warcraft
into
still like that? It was
talking
really
about
fucking
the
bad for a
issues that
time.
we are trying to address?
It wasn't like that when we last played it, I don't think, but
yeah. So I guess the issues start with, it's like, we're making MMO in Unreal. The amount of entities we want on the server, it's just not really going to work with standard out of the box Unreal replication and Unreal simulation. So there are two problems here. It's like, okay, even if we could fit all the players we want on a single server, we still can't replicate them, because those are two separate problems. We have the simulation and then the replication problem. So since this
I'm kind of blocking the text, maybe I should move my camera.
There is no standard Unreal solution for this.
I'll move it around a couple of times.
We had to go about making our own custom solution to solve these problems. And this is where IntrepidNet I guess was born. IntrepidNet is a fully distributed networking stack. It's tailor-made for Ashes of Creation, fully built in-house. None of this is off-the-shelf technology. It's all custom built for our game.
That sounds good. That's cool and all.
We'll get into these more in a bit,
but it can still be a little sketchy.
Quite a few different technologies.
Because there's no way for us to confirm if it works
the one that
until we have our hands
people
on.
are most interested in. People are always talking
and one would
about
hope
the server
that
meshing. We'll talk a lot
alpha
about
and the beta will be indicative of that.
How we implemented it,
but it doesn't necessarily have to be.
We have inter-server replication,
Doom say.
Which is,
I'm sure it'll be great.
We have multiple
I
servers
trust
and
in
they're
this
replicating
team.
to each other. How do we deal with that problem?
But
we have our own microservice layer.
I guess I'm cautious. I'm actually quite excited, because if it does work really well, there's a chance that it quite literally is the best.
Servers. We have dynamic gridding, which is very exciting, and you guys will like a lot. And then we have the replication graph, which is just more custom replication. I would almost call them formulas.
Is it too loud? Should I turn it down a bit?
So we'll be going into all of this. This is very detailed, very tech heavy.
If you're gonna say no, I'll turn it back up.
Strap in, buckle in.
Yeah, we need some like theme music for the IntrepidNet logo there too.
I know, they were so excited when Mike made a logo. They're like, it's a logo.
Like, oh, it's so nice of a logo.
I'm just thinking of like the Indiana Jones theme song right now.
Da, 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 da. Yeah,
right.
Totally.
So where do we start off with this?
Yeah, so I'm going to kick it over to Hunter, and he'll kind of like start with giving some of the base knowledge for like how Unreal works, and then he'll start with talking about how some of our server technology, our server meshing technology.
Start slouching.
Yeah, hello. So before we start diving too deep into IntrepidNet, there's probably a few terminologies that we wanted to preface with, just so that it helps the community and everyone else here follow along better with like the lingo and the terminology that we will be using. The first concept that we wanted to touch on is an actor. In Unreal Engine, you can think of an actor as like almost any physical representation of an object or an entity that's inside the world. As you can see on the photo, an actor can be anything, such as an NPC, a mount, a tent, a piece of cargo. Pretty much anything that you can visually see and represent is what we call an actor. And these actors, they can be replicated, which we'll get into on the next slide.
And PC would be a player character, for
yes.
those who don't know. Right.
Personal caravan.
So touching on replication here, replication is a term you might often hear in networking. I believe Zach touched upon that a little bit briefly in his introduction. Replication is the process of synchronizing some sort of state. You can think of it like a value or a property that's on an actor on the server. And then it's synchronizing that state from the server
so this is the thing that
clients that are
was really janky in the
actor.
Star Citizen
This is an important
showcase.
because of a concept called
still
server
impressive,
authoritative
just
networking.
janky.
The server, when you think of like networking in video games, the server normally has authority over your game world. And the properties, they're normally updated and checked against the server, which can then be shared and synchronized between your clients, which is through the form of replication.
Obviously, they're slowing this down for the
This is
thing for
also
the record.
part of why you never
not
want to trust the
shit-talking this.
client, as we said earlier, because when networking, when the client does some action to the server, for instance, you always want to verify that action on the server in some way or shape, or that's how you can get hackers or cheaters or something disrupting your game, because they're able to just send anything they want to the server, and your server will just trust it without verifying. And then that's where you can get the concept of, like I said, hacking and or cheating.
Yeah.
So as long as the server kind of holds your source of truth, the client sends the data that your server doesn't agree with, you can decline the actions and or kick or ban the user depending on how severe the action is they're taking that you're not trying to allow.
And obviously we've seen, a lot of games that we've played in where as the latency becomes worse for certain players, or as the load on the server becomes higher to process, that replication can show some weird effects in games, right? Where, wait a minute, what's that person doing? That doesn't look right.
Yep, that's when you would. That's typically when you would get like rubber banding, like if your servers really slow down, because you would only get an update every X period of time.
Yeah. So as you can kind of see in the video we showed, you can kind of see like player 1 is going into the water. This is from the perspective of the server. So as player 1 enters the server, it'll be like, okay, player 1 is swimming. So now player 2 and 3, since they're visually seeing player 1 swimming, they're going to get a state for player 1 saying they are swimming, and then that can kind of perform like the necessary actions of like seeing them play the swim animation or whatnot.
Yeah. And like, I guess to add on to what Hunter is saying, this is pretty much the entire problem. Like, you're doing this all the time for everything in the game that's replicated all the time.
Every movement, every ability, everything you click on, interact with, touch.
Yeah, all the goblins that are running around, they're playing animations, the players moving stuff in their inventories, the
trees, leaves moving subtly.
Well, something I'd be worried about is the server load that this causes, because it's got to be pretty massive,
not
right?
everything needs to be replicated across the server, right? Some things can be client only, like the ways the leaves might move specifically, but when the tree gets cut down, that needs to get replicated across.
Yeah. Well, and
so they're not just doing a catch-all. That's good to hear too.
To try and like reduce this problem, like if we're talking about the wind, for example, you could just replicate the wind direction and speed. And then
that's just something the server can communicate to us. It doesn't have to be communicated individually.
A specific replicated, wind and speed for each tree, for example.
Right. And that's part of the finesse of replication, right? Trying to identify
reducing the problem.
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah, a big part of our job, especially with working with gameplay, is trying to figure out how to make that as efficient and optimized as possible so that our game and servers can perform to the expectations we need.
And speaking of servers, server meshing, what everyone's been excited to talk about.
Right, so now we do replication. So now, originally, we just talked about how replicating a one server works. So now, the first part of IntrepidNet is what we would like to call, what we basically normally know as server meshing. In Unreal Engine, your game normally works under a single process server scenario. That means all your clients are connected to a singular server that runs the entire game.
There's some layering that you can do to mimic this. WoW did
this can't work for us, like for a few reasons Zach talked about in the previous slide. There's just with the mass amount of entities and actors we have simulating and processing the replication of all that for every actor in one server, that's pretty insane. Our solution, first and foremost, here is basically we had to modify Unreal Engine so that it is capable of having many server processes that are kind of meshed together or quilted
massive step forward, for the record, not to underplay it.
Allows us to use all these servers together to make up your whole entire game world or your game realm. This allows us to split up that simulation work between many of the server processes, and each server process has its own authoritative state of the world that it kind of owns and controls. This task, it was not a trivial task, and it required us ripping apart deep layers of Unreal Engine and their networking stack in order to really modify it to fit the architecture that we have really envisioned. Outside of this too, there's like a lot of proprietary programs as well that we made that kind of run in the background to help it orchestrate all this functionality as well. And by using Unreal Engine's API and doing all this, we were also able to add a lot of minimal overhead for our engineers when developing for this solution. And it allows us general control over like how things replicate and where they replicate, that we'll get into in the next few slides. So right now you see we have like the static dynamic world grid. Okay, that's great. But now you're probably thinking, okay, now that we stitch many servers together, what is my experience like that in regards to traversing the world? Will I be able to see into the other servers from mine, or will I randomly just start seeing actors pop in and out of existence right in front of me? That kind of takes us to this slide.
So this is gonna be the
so
good
our
one.
answer to that, of course, is we want to make this experience as seamless as possible for our players. If you cannot tell what's going on behind the scenes and everything that
Star Citizens
we are making,
you could see them interacting with objects through it.
If you can tell, then it's probably
there was a clear line where things get janky.
Look at what we're doing here and how we can improve and optimize it further. We've developed what we call here inter-server replication for this case, which means that instead of traditional replication, as we explained, was like server to clients, this is basically representing between servers now, or replication between servers.
You're not seeing projectiles, and I hope that that's
to what we
game
call
jank
a
and not
actor.
The server jank.
As you can see in the video here,
you can see other spell
there's
effects.
like a transparent white wall going across the screen that represents our in-game debug tools with our border regions being drawn. You can see that Vexillant is on one server and then Kevin is on another one, as he's on the other side of that border. So what Vexillant is seeing right now is actually not Kevin, but a proxy of Kevin is what we have deemed it.
Is it really Kevin?
Yeah,
Schrodinger's Kevin.
If only we could actually duplicate Kevin.
Schrodinger's server mesh.
Expand a little bit on, a lot of people who obviously aren't familiar with game development, they might not understand the terminology of debugging tools, right? So to talk a little bit about what a debug tool is.
Right. So when making a
hacks, but for people who are allowed to.
As this, we need a lot of information about the state of the world, what's happening, where things are going on. So we've developed a lot of like debugging tools that can be used inside the game and outside of the game, which these tools kind of help us collect that information, see where all the important things are happening, see where a failure might be going on. So in this particular instance, we have a debug tool that's in game that allows our developers to kind of draw these server borders so that you can kind of see while you're playing, like, okay, there's a border here. And then if QA is testing something, they can be like, okay, we transferred across the server and then this broke. So that means something's probably wrong with the server transfer. So that can kind of just help you like narrow down more of the problem space and give you that necessary information of like what was going on at the time. Because without that, if we have it turned off, you pretty much hopefully should not be able to tell the difference between the proxy we talked about or the actual actor. You can kind of think of the proxies here as a puppet. Any actual action that was done by the actual actor on its own like authority server, which is the server that owns it, it's then replicated to this proxy on your server.
But what would happen if I were to gank Kevin right now across server lines?
So that you can kind of see the representation of Kevin as if he was on the same server as you. We do it in a form of like, we call it lightweight because it's an up-to-date copy of the original actor.
I'm assuming it would just update it on his end that I'm dealing damage to him.
Specifically control like what does and doesn't get sent to this actor, so that
I'd like to see it,
we're more optimal in like what we're sending, how we're sending it, and when we're sending it. Whew, that was a mouthful.
So now, I think the other thing to think about, Hunter, Zach, Anton, is that not a lot of players obviously follow development of the games that they're excited about, right? They wait until the game is ready to play and marketing begins, and they can join in and purchase or whatever. Obviously, Ashes has followed a little bit of a different path where we're giving people a bit of insight into what it actually takes to make these types of games. And we generally tend not to delve too deeply into the highly technical components of our development process, because that's where a little bit of a cliff starts to form of player interest, even, viewership interest. Because it's nice to have the magic work in the background, and you don't necessarily care or want to know how or why it's working, just that it feels good, that it's responsive, and that it accomplishes from a gameplay loop perspective what you're expecting it to.
Understand.
But because of the level of complexity, because of the amount of effort, because of what we're trying to create is a next generation level of complexity of gaming. We feel it's important to provide you guys an opportunity to get some insight into what we're doing that's unique, into what we're doing that is going to service a long-term MMORPG at the scale that we need Ashes to be. And that requires some really smart people in the room who are creating proprietary technology that allows us to achieve that in a way that presents players with a game at the quality they expect. And so, I think this is a lot of fun to kind of, have you guys come and explain this front facing. It can be a mouthful, it can be a head full to kind of digest, but at the same time, we're nowhere near done. But at the same time, it gives you now an opportunity to really see how the sausage is made. And I think that's cool.
Right. Yeah. I could talk about this all day.
People don't talk about this. There are so many games that are doing things like this. Not exactly, but like, there are other games that have to solve these problems, and other games don't talk about this. This is a first.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So as you see in the video, you can see into the other server, but now you're probably thinking, okay, what if I want to interact with this proxy? How do I do that across the server boundary?
I've already asked this question.
Because the proxy is like a puppet controlled by the higher authority, we basically just now need events that we can send from the proxy up to its authority. And then we tell the authority that we want to modify data or execute some action on the authority server so that it can then replicate down to the proxy and then back to you. We have what we call a cross-server event or an inter-server event that's done through what's normally known as an RPC or remote procedure call, which allows pretty much just for this. Our goal with IntrepidNet is to make all the routing and the actions that we do as fast as possible so that we can keep the latency and interactions between servers a pretty seamless experience. And you hopefully shouldn't even be able to tell the difference between, like I said, a proxy or an authoritative actor.
I mean, that looks significantly better than
this is so important because these server borders that we're talking about, they're invisible. You won't know where they are.
Like night and day.
So I think the big important thing here is like we need to make it so PvP can happen on these borders without people noticing.
Yeah.
And that's really that's the real crux of it here. That's why it has to be so fast.
Right. And as you can see in like the video here, we have some fighting across the border. You can see while we're fighting kind of over the boundary, combat and everything seems pretty seamless and smooth as you would expect it without.
I wonder if people will gamify it though, finding the border lines and using it to their advantage. Because I'm sure there will be some jank.
Those events and that replication.
They won't be able to get rid of all of it. I'm sure.
Have these like in-depth battles player mapped out interactions between the servers with hardly any downside.
Yep.
So
in their testing here, it looks fine. I just wonder if the server has hiccups or lag.
Experience that you hopefully can't tell where that
if that will somehow cause problems.
And the other important thing about
that's
this
hard for them to showcase.
Hopefully
we'll get to test that in Alpha 2.
Information and the border
like
itself,
a big fuck off
I think
group of us and just fight on a borderline.
These borders are not static; they can change. They are dynamic.
You're spoiling it, Steven.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is my first time seeing the slide. Okay, go. No, go. I'm sorry.
I think you were talking about seamless transition, so we can move into that.
Yeah.
So if you look or go back one more, Maggie. I'm sorry. So if you kind of see in the video there as well, now that we can kind of do interactions to the proxies across the border, you may have noticed in the video, I did charge myself across the border and then I basically attacked what we call the proxy of Kevin. However, during that charge, we did basically a server promotion that took place behind the scenes that you probably didn't notice. So if we go to the next slide, we can kind of see now we're introducing the concept of server transfers. This is kind of where IntrepidNet gets very complex. This allows us to not only share and split the statically defined server areas, but we can also transfer actors to new server areas that are moving across the world, or
but you can kind of see his animation come up slow down like for a couple frames there
into a different server, and then this allows us to do basically that global load balancing,
like a really quick stutter that I.
And then, so
I don't know
basically
how I'm
when
seeing
a player
it.
or an actor is within range of this border,
maybe it's because I'm
our system on the back end kind of begins a negotiation and the creation of a proxy so that it can replicate it to the nearby server. This doesn't only happen on like a 1x1 scenario that you might see here. Even if it's a 2x2 when you're in like the corner of 4 different servers, your proxy will then be replicated to on 3 different servers from the one authority. So that way, no matter where you are, whichever server you're in around that area, you'll still be able to see this.
I suppose they only
actor on a different server.
That's the most they need to do, right? Like it doesn't need to be replicated by a server you're nowhere fucking near.
If that actor then fully crosses the border, going outside of the authority region of the server it's currently in, the two servers obvious, then kind of start negotiating.
Stating the obvious in a situation like this, I think is.
This is when now helpful. Server A is passing over that authority we previously defined to server B.
Can go anywhere,
then
I guess.
Promotions, they're like a whole different beast. In order to do a lot of like the promotions, there's a couple things we have to do, such as like ensuring first you have to ensure the actor is like fully made with all of its components and children. We have to ensure they're all up to date with the entire state that was deemed necessary for the new copy to have, because we don't want to lose any data during this entire transfer.
And Hunter, people hear the term like, children and the state and whatnot. Elaborate a little bit about, what that means at a high level.
Right. So when we have all these entities, such as like an actor, actors can then have on them what we call components, which is basically building blocks that you can then add to your actor that kind of make up the actor, what it does, how it's supposed to act, things like that. So for example, you could have like an actor, and then that actor has an interactable component. So that means you can interact with this actor, or it could have an inventory component. So that means, okay,
trading if you're standing on the mesh line,
like a bank or it stores
or if the mesh line cuts through like town.
And to contextualize that, let's say, you have your mount out, you're not on your mount, right? But another player could walk up to your mount and they would be prompted with an interact that says to mount your mount. As you're moving across the boundary, that actor has that component that is the interactable component that needs to go with
That's good to hear,
right?
But
because
fuck,
if you transfer this actor or you're proxying it, you still need to be able to do that interaction across the boundary. So we proxy that interaction component.
I don't know, man.
And just like we can do cross-server events on the actor itself, we can also do them at the component level, so that way it can communicate with its authoritative one. Because we kind of treat the proxies as like a read-only concept. So the proxies are just visually kind of representing what the authority represents. So any data modifications or anything that has to happen at the authoritative level, so that way then the proxy can get updated appropriately across any server. That's kind of how we have like that central truth of the actor is whatever server it's authority on. And there's only ever one copy of that.
I just want you to know, this conversation so far has probably induced about 30 to 50 people now wanting to take computer science degrees.
That would be awesome.
Not quite, but it is interesting.
It's pretty cool stuff.
I'm glad I get to understand it.
Definitely took a lot of time and a lot of
effort.
It'll
help if anything ever janky happens as a result of it. I'll know exactly who to blame.
We're excited to be able to show it.
No, but
although watching Kevin run back and forth,
I think
making me a little
understanding this kind of stuff, is important if you want to play games at high level.
Works where you
it's
may
the
not
same idea as like learning frame data in a fighting
say
game,
you teleport across the map.
Or learning like the latency timing in a shooter.
It kind of does the same exact route, except it may just need to make your actor.
And this may never impact gameplay whatsoever.
So it all falls
but if it ever does,
the same generalized.
It's very good to understand how it works.
And then,
or if something fucks up and
when
like
we
I don't know, you
normally
died
do
due to
have
some
that
weird
proxy
janky
actor
lag.
on the other server,
It's
that
like,
means
oh, I
when
can
you're
like,
promoting,
probably on
we
mesh
can
line.
reuse your existing
You know,
two
be
actors
careful when
that are from
fighting there
server
next
A and
time.
server B, your
Type deal.
authority and the proxy.
You know, shit like
And
that.
we can
It's just good to
convert
know.
that proxy to the authority and then
Again, it could never come
demote
up.
the
May
authority
never ever be a
onto
thing or an
proxy.
issue or a benefit
So
or
this
anything
allows
in
us
that
more
realm.
to have that more seamless
But if it ever
experience when you're
was,
swapping servers. So that way it's a lot faster. You don't need to send a lot more data to copy over to be created. And then there's not really any visual hitching at all when this happens, because we're not spawning or destroying a new one on the fly during that promotion.
And this helps also with client performance?
It can.
I feel
Not
like it may
going
hurt
too into
performance.
detail, but
Yeah.
We'll talk
actors
also.
actors really aren't cheap. So replicating an actor can be expensive, and every new actor you kind of open and close to the client, which is basically like a create or a destroy, that just adds this additional overhead that we didn't want. So we can kind of negate it by just reusing the existing one we already have, and then doing that swap. So that way you don't even notice anything happened.
Day Wednesday.
You were
we
about
try
to ask
to-
Is it
something,
Wednesday?
Steven.
No, he got it on the spawn and
Was like,
destroy.
screen
Okay,
might
yeah.
go black.
Yeah.
It is.
Like I said, our goal is to make it as seamless as possible. And one of the main pillars when we were making this entire system was we try not doing anything on the client. If all of our actions are kind of done on the server in a fast and efficient way, the client shouldn't notice anything happening at all. And that's kind of where this comes in, because we don't want the client to notice. So every time we're doing something, we're like, okay, how can we do this without affecting the client's experience? Because we don't want them to have a bad time.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's
I'm
talk
glad.
a
So
little bit
they've thought of the
about
things they need to think of.
how all this stuff is
the
working.
TLDR.
Because yeah, we are communicating between servers, we're sending events between servers, we are transferring between servers. But how is that information flowing? How do the clients end up seeing that stuff? And typically, the way this is done is you create a centralized replicator, and all the different servers from all across the realm send all the relevant information about all the different entities to that replicator. So let's say one server has a bunny, and that bunny moved around. It sends that information to the replicator. Another server has a goblin that took damage. It will send that information to the replicator. And then all the players will connect to that replicator, and the replicator will parse through all those different entities, decide which player should see which entities, and send that information to the specific player. However, this creates a few issues, and you might actually be able to see it from that graph there that we've just created a bottleneck. As this singular process now may need to keep track of hundreds of thousands of entities and send potentially hundreds of millions of updates to all those clients, because all those bunnies moving and the goblins and the
I'm glad
players
they're not just
and
saying
the
this is a
trees
perfect
falling,
technology.
all that
It works.
information has to be passed through the replicator and then sent to each
Is that
individual
animated?
client.
And I guess something to add here too. Anton,
Oh, it is.
like,
That
this
was
is
fucking with my eyes
that
sitting
would keep
back like
moving
that. I was like
problem. We're
actually
trying
getting
to,
confused.
like like if we had a single server, this would be the same problem, where all the replication is happening on one place, and we're trying to not do that.
Yes, actually, we tested a solution like this during Alpha 1, and this bottleneck, it kind of affects how many players you can have in the realm as a total. Like, you can spawn all the servers you want, but at some point you hit a limit on the replicator itself, and it doesn't matter how many more servers you spawn. You are limited by that cap on the replicator. During Alpha 1, the number we got was like, I think, about 1,000 players, where after hitting that point, you can no longer really scale anymore.
And it's important to note that because of this more, I guess, for lack of a better term, archaic and monolithic approach, which many of us have likely experienced in older games, there are certain scenarios in those games that are multiplayer where you start to see that server is having trouble. And it's because it's hitting these types of choke points.
Yes, and in fact, when this replicator is overwhelmed, the
I don't like this
entire
slide.
realm will
Everything's
lag.
like
It doesn't
subtly
matter if
animated.
you're
And it's
alone in
fucking
one
with me.
server in a remote island, you will lag because there is a big battle on the other side of the realm.
I remember in so many games where I would be out hunting and peaceful, nobody's nearby, and I'm noticing everything is starting to churn, and I'm like, what is going on? And then I'll look into global chat and I'll see, oh shit, they're having a
no wars
huge
is going
fight
on.
somewhere across the realm in a totally different part of the world, and I am suffering as a result of it.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And
And
I guess that's a good bridge to what we're doing.
Yeah, it is a pretty good bridge because basically
Oh no, I hate this one even
as
more.
of creation
My eyes!
Trying to aim for player counts that we found out that centralized replicator does not support. So we had to come up with our own solution, and this is, from what we know, not
Like,
a
even
very
the client boxes
common
are moving up
solution,
and down, and it's
possibly
fucking
because
with me,
it's more difficult to pull off. What we basically did is we completely got rid of that centralized replicator, and instead we had the servers themselves collaborate with the other servers around them and exchange information that way.
There's not a whole lot for me to react on this
each
one. I'm
individual
gonna be real.
server have all
It's just
the
cool.
data they need to serve the clients that are
Sounds like they're
connected to them.
intelligent.
In
doing what
our
they need
scenario
to.
over here, you can see we have 4 servers and 2
They're willing
clients
to
are
admit where
connected
there's some
to
faults,
each one of
and
those
they're working
servers.
on them.
If we had a centralized
Props.
replicator, all those 4 servers would be connected to that one replicator, and then all 8 clients would be connected to that one replicator too. So we've actually distributed the problem, we've eliminated the bottleneck, and we've also eliminated this one point of failure that existed beforehand, where if that one replicator fails, the entire realm goes down. And we can actually, have a look at the next slide where we see how we are more fault tolerant than if we have a centralized replicator. And we can actually, you can swap to the next slide. There you go.
Thank you.
We have the entire server grid over there. And if one server goes down, everyone else can keep playing it like normal. We patch that server up, we fix the issue, we bring it back up, and everyone else never experienced anything. The players that were connected to that one server got booted and then can rejoin just fine.
I mean,
if we had a centralized replicator,
if you're having a lot of like downtime in areas, that's gonna suck. One thing that I think the start, correct me if I'm wrong, if anybody knows. I mean,
so that's another good benefit.
Setup was going to replace the dead server with a live server.
This was the elimination of the bottleneck. And it actually lets us scale. We are
so I think that's a little bit worse
distributed.
Although everywhere else it's a lot better.
Servers to a certain point, of course.
Just comparing the two.
And this is not. And by the way, Anton, like this is not just a strength, obviously, of the.
And for the record, Star Citizen is just the only one I've actually looked at in any capacity. So,
but when you have to bring such a monolithic server down because of that, because of, let's say, whatever error you can't determine, that has a cascade effect across, everything. You're having to affect the database, to affect the login servers, to have the player queues going off again. The ability for this to truly be distributed and for us to be fault tolerant is an entirely different player experience when it comes to these large, massive MMORPG type settings.
Yeah, I mean it's very typical, like with an MMO, like that something else is happening in the world somewhere. Someone's hacking, someone's, there's a really large raid or siege happening, and the server falls over, and then everyone gets kicked. With our model, that doesn't happen. The rest of the server is fine. Performance is still fine in the rest of the server. People can keep playing. If that server goes down, we'll deal with it. We'll spin it back up, and it will just seamlessly rejoin the grid once we're back in a good state.
And this, eliminating the replicator was definitely not easy. And it caused us quite a few problems, but let's investigate one of those problems and the solutions we came up to solve it. So because we did not want to create an really large connection network between all the different servers, we essentially connect the servers to the nearby servers, the neighboring, or like some that are close by. And that is fine in most situations. Over here, we can see there's 2 players in 2 neighboring servers. Those servers communicate. So if those 2 players are in a party, even though they might be a little bit too far away to see each other, they can still see each other on the map. However, in a more complex situation where that other player is maybe on the other side of their realm, now those servers do no longer have a connection, a direct connection to each other. So we have created a problem. How can player 1 see player 2 when player 2 is on the other side of the world? If we had a centralized replicator, sure, we have the data just there, we can figure it out, but we do not. What do we do about that? And to solve that issue, we created a concept called microservices. Microservices are, imagine them kind of like servers on top of the servers, like some database, for example, but it's active. It's not just storage, they're doing work. We have a node service that is responsible for leveling up and keeping track of all the nodes and the upgrades that have to be done to nodes. We have a population service that is doing the spawning across all the realms. And we have a social service, which would be, for example, what would affect the party example that we just talked about. This means that server 1 and server 8 on the diagram can connect to that social service and exchange the locations of those 2 players. That way, player 1 and player 8 can have exactly the information they need to be able to see each other on the map. And yep. What was it, Steven?
Oh, nope, that wasn't me.
Oh, that wasn't you. Okay, sorry, my bad. Yeah, and this actually gave us some extra benefits. We were able to make some pretty cool tools with it because we wanted to be able to have like an overview of what happens to the entire realm. We wanted to be able to keep track of all the players, all the NPCs, see all the different gatherables being spawned, see all the trees. And that's kind of hard to do if we just connect to a single server and then see what's on that one server and then jump on another server and see what's there. So we created a service that keeps track of all entities in the world and a tool that can allow us to view those entities. This is a pretty cool tool because we can see the players moving around. We can see them
I'm curious if that's really necessary.
In events. We can see the NPCs dying. We can see them collect gatherables. So if there's any issue
on the scale that they have it, sorry, it is necessary.
We'll detect it and hopefully fix it. It's really cool.
I think the big thing to say here is like, we can see the entire world state, which we generally can't do because we're so distributed and everything's so server central. But since we have these services, we can make a debug service like this.
Oh wait, never mind. I get it. I might have missed something, but I'm seeing it now.
I also wanted to piggyback off of that, Anton, of your services. The services as well are also pretty much distributed, like going for our model, so that if one of those systems go down, it's not taking down the every game system. So if the chat service goes, or the social service, for example, goes down, you may just not be able to chat or form a party for a few minutes until it comes back up, but you should still be able to interact with like your guild, your node, your mail, etc. And we tried making the services as well fault tolerant, like we explained earlier. So that
most games have something similar to that, but
go down, come back up on the fly,
stating the obvious,
fixed,
even if it is obvious,
and so that we can still provide that seamless experience. While the feature may not be working, everything else should
fully understand what we're getting and what's capable of what.
Services approach.
We don't just assume.
Right, there is not an interconnectivity where you have one failure in a single service causes a cascading effect across all the services. Right?
Exactly.
they're independent.
So you don't get any arc gauge problems
for a recovery time
or one little hiccup nukes the whole fucking server
while the other services continue their operations.
Exactly.
And then these debugging tools allow us to see where those problem areas are, or what situation or actor might be causing a problem, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, we don't have all the tools, a slide for all the tools, but we do have monitoring tools for all the different services. We know when they're lagging, we know when they're down, we can monitor pretty much everything. It's pretty cool.
Yes, it's very cool. Cool. Now let's get into the really fun stuff now.
Yeah, I know this next one is something really that the community has actually been talking about quite a bit.
Yeah, I saw a bunch of videos. People have been talking a lot about this.
Yeah.
So go into it, Anton, because this is your
dynamic server mission.
Yeah. Oh God, I've been looking forward to, like, since I joined the company, I've been wanting to implement this. And this is an answer to a problem. And that problem that it's trying to answer is, sure, you have all those different servers, but usually player activity tends to condense to certain areas. Let's say a large PvP battle is happening at some place. And when that happens, that one server can be overwhelmed. And you usually wouldn't want to just
so instead of just allocating server power
for everything,
they section it off
further. Because that can be incredibly expensive and wasteful. But having those smaller servers would be really useful. So what if you can do it dynamically? What if you can detect when a server is overwhelmed and then split it? This is what dynamic gridding is. And it can be a little bit tricky to implement.
Broken record moment.
Difficulty
that just looks janky as shit.
That you just now split.
Like, I feel like that's just gonna that could potentially cause issues.
They were casting,
and I really hope if there is any ironing out that needs doing when we get like actual stress testing going.
That is a difficulty there.
And something that they are capable of fixing. Like, these cases in which we're splitting a server,
and I hope they have backups to do something a little more conventional with their servers.
So it's not like we can just a couple people, we can split them, we can do like a quick fade, and it will be fine. If we're splitting a server, it's because it's under load, and there's a lot of action going on. So we want to keep that action going on and not interrupt it while we balance the load across multiple servers.
And it's important to call back again to the very beginning of this conversation, right? How do you determine the types of architecture necessary? You must first understand what is the mission statement of the game. And Ashes is built with a lot of open world, dynamic and emergent player behaviors that are attempting to encourage high player densities at any point within the open world locations, which makes this particular problem a requirement when determining architecture of how do we address this, right? And I'm not familiar with, and Zach, Anton, Hunter, I'm not sure if you guys are, but I'm not familiar with any other tech stack or networking approach that has a dynamic gridding solution in order to better accommodate and facilitate that emergent player density behavior.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not well versed in it, but I can't think of one.
This is something that a lot of people have tried. It is the answer to scalability if you can get it right, and that is that is our mission here, is to get this right. We want to be the people that solve this problem, and because if we solve this, the level of battles and dynamicism, I guess, we'll be able to have in Ashes is going to be unparalleled to any other game.
Yeah, and to make something clear, we're not talking about the far future 5 years from now. This is currently in development, and we are hoping at least to have it available by Alpha 2.
And the server meshing part of it.
Okay, so they do have a fallback.
Yeah, so the
dynamic aspect of it.
Yeah, in case
so the static
ready.
Part, is already going.
Yeah, it's been going for many months now.
Yeah, years now. And all of our dev test servers, people are on them every day, running it. It's fine. This is like where we're investing our dev time right now, is getting this perfect.
Getting this ready for the entrance of Alpha 2.
Yep. And hopefully Ashes of Creation is going to be the first game that implements this technology and actually deploys it.
Yes.
That would be really fun.
Well, considering Star Citizen
quickly,
won't
guys.
be
It's
releasing
not
anytime
that.
soon, more than likely.
We're moving.
Very cool.
Or didn't they actually come up with a release date recently or something?
Yeah,
I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it.
To Hunter, yeah.
Yeah, I guess now that we've, all these slides are.
Although I don't know if they're
talking
doing
about
anything like that
distributing the problem,
specifically.
separating the problem into multiple servers, so we don't have to deal with thousands and thousands of players and on the same server doing replication. But we still have like the core problem here, right? We can only split servers so far.
What would we call this?
Make them like 10 meters by 10 meters. We can't do that. It's going to be too small. So we need to still support
creator
a
from back in the day.
You get a server.
Exactly. So we still need to solve the.
Or we call that the Asmongold effect nowadays.
How many players can we get on a server, have them replicate and simulate at the same time?
Streamer creating a crowd by existing.
So I'll pass it over to Hunter, and he'll kind of go into I guess the problems that we have when we're with Unreal replication and how we've gone about speeding them up so we can support many hundreds of players on a server.
Yeah. So kind of piggybacking off what Zach said, like what do we do when a large amount of players are, say, following your favorite streamer into a small area, and then we can't just keep dividing our servers into such tiny areas, and that you're needing a single server that's still of a reasonable size to then be able to process the heavier load and replication that's happening in that exact area at that exact moment. So in order to do that, we have to then figure out how we can increase the number of players and entities that a single server can support. And doing so will also help us increase our overall concurrent user limits per realm. Because as a rough napkin math, of course, you take the players per server, multiply that by the number of servers, and there's your CCU, right? It's that easy.
Yeah, that's how it works.
Obviously. So I'm going to kind of go into now, we're going to touch back up on kind of what we explained earlier, why is replication expensive? What's going on? So we kind of wanted to explain.
I don't know how to read that.
On this slide here, for example, you can see an example of a CPU performance profile that we took during a large-scale bot test. You can see here that the single frame we're staring at took 150 milliseconds, for example. Now, 150 milliseconds may not seem like much, but when you want to, for example, you're talking about servers and tick rates.
That's
and if you're trying to target, say, a 30 or 60 frames per second or ticks per second server,
that's pretty fucking
you
long,
only get
honestly.
a budget of about
not
33
unplayable,
milliseconds or 16 milliseconds
not
per
great.
frame in order to keep that stable high tick time.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're referring to when you're talking about tick rates and ticks? People
right.
might not be familiar with that.
As your game server runs, it runs and processes basically the entire world at an interval of ticks, or frames is what it's called. The faster you can do all that processing, the faster your gameplay and experience is going to be. If you're targeting, say, roughly 30 to 60 frames per second, which is a pretty good targets to have for a game server of an MMO that needs to be very
honestly, trying to go higher than that in an MMO, very good, especially a modern MMO,
is different than client.
It's a fool's errand. It's not worth trying.
But they're
because people might be 30 is not acceptable. So I just want to make that clear.
They're vaguely coupled. Yeah. So one of the things you would notice, if server performance went down, is you would notice rubber banding, when you see people just jumping around the world. Or you would notice your latency goes up, and you would notice that by you're trying to do PvP, and you feel and you cast Fireball, and you feel the latency between the time you casted it and when it actually executed on the server. Right. So this time, these tick times that we're talking about, that's what it correlates to for the player.
Right, because normally when you do an action, the client triggers something, it tells the server, hey, do this, and the server then replicates back to your client. If these frames are taking a long time to process in between, that means your server just has artificial latency, and it's taking a lot longer to then process that incoming message to then return back to you. So like in this 150 millisecond scenario, if our game was steadily running every frame at like 150 milliseconds of time to process, that would drop our server down to roughly like 6 ticks or 6 frames per second, which then you will really heavily around that time start feeling like latency, rubber banding.
You might start to notice something,
etc.
And that's not acceptable for action combat PvP MMO. Like, it just doesn't work.
Right.
It's not acceptable for fucking anything, truth be told.
I played those games. It definitely doesn't work.
We all have blamed lag before, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we know that this is unacceptable. What do we have to do to optimize this?
Right. So now this kind of tells us replication, and now it's like, okay, let's dive a bit deeper into why this replication is very expensive. One of the big major factors replication can be slow is because first, when you want to do your replication, you have to gather and determine basically relevancy of every actor in the game to not only your connection, but every other connection that's being processed in that frame. So relevancy is used and needed to determine basically how far away an actor is from your player. And then there might be some other some other checks that they may need to do, like is it visible or not. But for simplicity's sake, we're just going to base it off a distance for now. So then it's basically comparing that distance to you and saying, okay, are you eligible for me to replicate to you? Because we obviously don't want things being considered to replicate to you if it's like across the world. Like, you don't care what's happening on the far northern end of the continent while you're all the way down on the southern end. Like, that's just going to waste a lot of processing and bandwidth. So
okay, so this is basically
the relevancy checks,
performance optimizing.
This gets way more expensive the more players and more actors you have that are replicated, because then it's for every actor, for every player, am I within range of them?
Yeah, and when we're talking about an MMO, where you're gonna have thousands of players on the server, thousands of NPCs, tens of thousands of replicated actors, you just can't check you can't do a distance check on all of those things in a reasonable amount of time.
Right. And so this is an optimization here for networking purposes, but it also leads to then slowing down your CPU resources, because again, you have to do that like every tick or at every whatever interval you set to do these checks.
Yeah, it's like having a tree load behind the mountain.
If
you don't really need it loaded.
The previous example, for example, I believe I don't think it shows in the profile, but roughly a little bit over 1/3 of that total time in that profile was just doing the relevancy checks. A good thing about our model, though, because all of our servers are distributed, they only have to do those relevancy checks for just everything within that then distributed zone. As of if we had that central replicator, that replicator would then have to still process every single player, every single actor, etc. in the world in some way, shape, or form to then determine if it should be relevant to you or not. So by splitting up and doing the distributed server load like we're doing, this allows us then to kind of reduce that problem area, but it's still a problem.
It's still really big.
It's still a really big problem. Now, adding more servers to the solution, that can make it smaller and smaller, but eventually there's we want to get it as fast as possible. So it's like, how do we make this better? How do we make this faster?
To be clear, that profile was using it had a server meshing, and it still was 35% relevancy checks. So we need to reduce those relevancy checks. How do we do that? How can we tell Unreal not to do all those unnecessary checks?
So this is a current issue they have? This is what they're working on?
Unreal in recent years introduced something called the replication graph, and that is,
I think that's what they're saying,
something that's
my interpretation,
gives the developers the ability to write a custom solution into how to handle all those relevancy checks and how to determine which players should see which actors when it comes to replication. And it can actually lead to some really great performance gains. We'll look at it in a bit. But let's start and see how we use this replication graph to solve specifically this relevancy check.
In our use case,
we see.
I get it.
You still cannot see too far away, but there are a couple actors that are really close to the player, that goblin over there and a loot box. And there is also
we'll fix it with more meshing.
A bear a little bit on a medium distance away, and a bunny really far away. Now imagine that keeps stretching for 500 meters more, and there's 200 more bunnies. And without the replication graph, we would have to check every single one of those bunnies and say, is this within my distance? Is this within my distance? And that's a problem. That's expensive to do. So what we're going to use the replication graph.
So will this effectively be dynamic LOD?
We are going to create this grid where we eliminate all the cells that are far further away from us and only check the nearby cells. That allows us to only check these 3 actors that are around us, skipping potentially hundreds of other actors that are further away. And this can lead to a pretty big performance improvement. We noticed, and this is like highly varying depending on the scenario, of course, but on an average scenario, we noticed about a 1.5 times performance improvement, like a 35% reduction in our replication costs. That
would still be like 100 and some, or about 100 ms, right?
But it's still not fast enough. And if we analyze the problem a little bit, we'll see that
serviceable but not great.
We're talking and thinking about like the NPCs and the bear and the goblin, but we are also comparing our distance with all the trees, with all the bushes that you can pick up, with potentially some buildings that are destructible. Why are we doing that?
Okay, that's fair.
Can we do something to improve this? And the answer is yes, we can. What we can do is
I know Unreal
we can monitor
did have open world games in mind when it was built, but not necessarily MMOs.
Ores or these trees are changing, and
or I would assume not MMOs.
We can move them out of our grid, so we're not even considering them at all. We might have 2,000 trees in the area. Well, we're not even going to look at them because none of those trees just got cut down. If someone is cutting them down, then yes, we're going to move them temporarily into the special grid. And then once they're done cutting out and everyone sees that they were cut down, we put them back to the dormancy bucket. It's essentially, you can imagine like the actors going to sleep for a little bit. And this gives us a really, really large improvement. We noticed in our tests about 5 times improvement in replication times. So far, if we also include the previous optimizations, we've improved our replication performance by 7 times. And yet that's still not fast enough. It's still not fast enough, mainly because of our worst case scenario. And that worst case scenario is people keep packing in that one small area. There's an event happening. There's
I love how they're simulating lag.
200 people run in the same area. Yes, you can ignore the
fucking screen over
relevancy to some faraway tree. That's great. That's again, that's more than welcome. But if 200 players can see each other, that means that 200 times 200, you're sending 40,000 updates per tick.
Yeah.
And
I think they're going to have to concede at some point.
One thing to add there, Anton, this is typically
they're never going to make a perfect system, at least not yet.
Or a new shard. This is like typically that case. But as we talked about earlier,
not to say they don't know
one
that.
of our goals is we don't want to do layering. We don't want to do sharding. We want everyone who's in the same area to be able to see each other.
Right, and you could. You could then use like dynamic greeting to help in this scenario, but again, we can only make the servers so
like
small.
We're always going to have a performance dip.
We kind of run out of that room.
There's not a whole lot that can be done about that
in
the grand scheme of things.
Happening around you.
Indeed. So we need to figure out a way to
mitigating
further improve this worst case scenario.
This is all very exciting, though.
This is where we kind of hit an engine limit. And this engine limit is that the replication graph of Unreal is the replication tick in general, not just the replication graph, is single threaded. And that's because the engine in general is single threaded. Now, what does that mean? What does single threaded mean? It means that all the processing happens in one core of the CPU. And
isn't that typically a very bad thing?
But the
that wasn't me.
That means that even though the server might have 4 cores, all the other 3 cores are going to stand there and wait for the first thread to do all the processing. This is done normally in Unreal because it was not designed
I've actually had to
be multi-threaded.
Contend with this issue.
It is a very single-threaded engine.
Dwarf Fortress
and replication.
They recently solved this issue.
The most single-threaded system out of all the systems in Unreal.
Because a lot of games used to run on single-core setups.
Making it multi-threaded is incredibly difficult.
Single-core, however you want to phrase it.
At least I am not aware of it being done before. I tried to do some research around it at the time, and everyone was saying basically that it's impossible. But we did it anyway. We persevered through, and we multi-threaded.
We just casually did the impossible. No big deal.
And well, looking at the results,
but this is different than what I was saying. By the way,
not disappoint.
I'm aware.
We actually gained, and there's a graph showing it on the next slide.
Instead of processing the game,
it's processing 2.5 times improvement, 2.4 times to be more exact, in our replication ticks.
Huge.
Yeah, it was a really, really big improvement in our replication, and it's probably necessary to achieve the
here translating for me. Let's
go. I don't think it would be possible without doing this.
Okay, no, that's a number I like to see.
The really important thing to note about this optimization and why it's like such a big deal compared to like the 5 times improvement we saw before from dormancy is that this improvement helps equally even on the worst case scenario. The other ones in the worst case scenario, they're helpful, but they're not that helpful. This is incredibly important even on the worst case scenario. And if we add it on all the other improvements we've done so far, we've actually achieved a total improvement of total reduction on our replication tick by 94%. So we are only at 6% of the original cost for replication.
We know
this
we're
was
awesome.
Actually a huge win for our team. But there's still many more things that need to be done. Ashes of Creation is an incredibly ambitious MMO in terms of scale, and we need to do a lot of work in order to hit our goals.
And this is obviously, again, going back to the start of this whole conversation. What is Ashes of Creation trying to be?
Their multi-threaded functions. Okay,
so of the tech stack we are using in order to
that brings the.
And when we said in 2017 that we are looking to bring massive,
I'm doing like quick maths in my head. That brings it down to like
an engine with the graphical fidelity, the front end that Unreal
like what, like 80 or 90.
So
MS
is so important to the immersive nature, to
maybe a little more
of the world, to
like 75ish,
the quality of the
which
setting,
is much more reasonable for an MMO.
Proprietary back end that can facilitate the same player experience that a massively multiplayer world wants to
significantly
provide.
Better.
That's the dream. That is what Ashes is trying to be.
Now, if Ashes manages to somehow get that down even further, hot damn.
Phenomenal work here, guys.
Yeah, great job.
This is huge.
Yeah.
Obviously, that won't be a translation of one-to-one.
To shout out the team. The team has done an incredible job. We are pushing MMO tech to where it's never gone, and we intend to keep doing this moving forward. Hunter, Alex, Kevin, Andrew, Anton, Adam, Ish, Doug, they've all done amazing work, to get us to this point where we're at today, and I'm sure they'll keep doing it.
Everyone's got
moving forward. If you're interested in working on problems
basic
like this,
names, then you get Hunter, a little out there, Antonios, I like that one. And then Ish. Ish is an interesting name.
Working on tech like this, please send us an application. We're always interested.
And we know that like this showcase,
kind of
this tech talk, this TED talk,
kind of a name nerd,
this GDC talk, whatever we want to apply to this in-depth technical discussion is going to appeal not just to people who are aspiring, obviously, within this field to learn it, to do it, to this is their career going forward, but also to those of you who have been within this field of work and who yearn to work on the types of problems that we're discussing here in this showcase. We have a phenomenal culture at Intrepid. We have a
the Intrepid studio members
that is,
for the server minds.
Shortage of problems that need to be solved. And one thing that our community has done a phenomenal job with is helping to evangelize the project and the company. And we're here to say that we have apps open. We have positions that are available. And if you want to be a part of this team, or if you want to help others find this team so that they can apply, please share this link, share this video with others. Go on, social media and let people know we're working on some
go make my dream MMO
tech that is going to change the face of massively multiplayer when it comes to a genre. So, very excited and proud of what your team has accomplished. You guys, I know, are working every single day and doing a phenomenal job.
He's getting quieter, man.
Congratulations. Just very well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's great to experience it in game too. And I know that, our PI folks have already experienced that in our Node Wars test as well. So maybe they didn't even realize it. They might not have noticed, but there were definitely server workers working hard in that, and we were capturing data. So we super duper appreciate it. And as we head into Alpha 2, we're only going to get more data and be able to continue to push on. And as the folks here have stated, moving towards more of that dynamic state.
Yeah, it's been in progress. It's going to be in progress still for many years as we continually find new ways to advance it and make it better. We're committed to providing kind of like that quality we want for our players. And as a lot of us have played MMOs in the past, we just networking was the big stopper for a lot of things, and
everyone thought, oh bro, we're just gonna get an MMO where they fix the pay to win side of it.
Make it at a better
experience. Like, nah, brother, we're coming for all the jank, dude, all the bullshit, all the garbage. Fuck all of it.
To a new tech style or try to figure out their networking issues.
Yeah, and of course, all of us here are huge MMO fans, and I know those of you who are watching.
I was about to make a really stupid
obviously,
joke.
If you're sitting through this,
I'm still gonna make it.
The plan for us is
I was going to say that they're out here trying to be the Valorant of MMOs.
Push forward and continue to change things, even after
except
post-launch,
the things they're fixing here actually matter.
Things forward. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I said it.
Thank you to Hunter and Zach and Anton for your time and putting together an amazing deck. A little extra shout out to Mike for putting together all the graphics.
Maybe I'll elaborate that on that one day.
For helping,
and explain why shooters didn't need the fixes that Valorant imposed.
We super appreciate it. Any final words, Stephen, to wrap things up?
Yeah, absolutely. Just, out in the community, let us know. These are always the more risky takes that we provide insights to in our monthly updates because they are
definitely a very boomery take, though, I will admit.
We know that this has an appeal to perhaps a smaller audience. But give us your feedback. Give us your thoughts. What did you think of this presentation? How do you enjoy, learning a little bit more in-depth, under the hood conversation about what it takes to make these types of games, to make, Ashes of Creation, that dream of all of ours.
I mean, this is only a window.
How does it appeal to you? What are your
But
questions?
People talk shit about this stuff all the time without having a fucking clue.
YouTube channel in the
now we can say that at least a couple thousand people do have a fucking clue. Let's go.
The community team continues to do a bang up job of collecting your insights and bringing it back to the team. But we enjoy, sharing this and giving our perhaps more sheltered developers who are in the behind the scenes making all the magic and everything work an opportunity to come out and talk about.
Thank you, Master Steven, for letting me out of the basement.
Makes the wheels
the server's working
bus.
Better.
And it's a great opportunity, I think, for them to come out, see a little daylight,
and good enough.
Bask in the sun of what is the glory that our community.
I need 5 ping.
Thank you for providing an opportunity to enjoy a game at this scale.
Back in your hole, developer.
Obviously, without your guys' hard work. And so with that, I think we'll see you guys back on stream.
We'll see you on the flip side.
Back to the server mines with you. Not.
Welcome back, everyone. We'll play the video in the background so you have something visually to watch while we discuss some things. But of course, we do. We're going to put on
their version of Subway Surfers for us.
Most of them, I feel like a lot of your questions we answered throughout later in the deck. But it seems like you guys liked the presentation. So again, Mike, thank you for putting that together, and
did I like
Hunter, Anton, and Zach for putting together.
I'll be straight.
Very thorough.
That was boring as shit.
Of the things that we're working
but
on,
it's informative and it's necessary to know. And it's again,
information that we want to share with you.
It's not
guys.
meant to be entertaining.
Of course, we always like to be transparent. We like to give you guys a heads up on what's coming and what we're doing. And one of the things is that with this technology, you know, we had stated previously that we weren't going to.
Sorry, calling it not interesting is probably the wrong way. It just wasn't entertaining
for a reason, and that reason was we wanted to make sure that we could service all the users that we had. One of the things that we really want to make sure of is that no matter who we have
really my goal here.
Joining us, that they're going to have
it's all 90% information. That was just more 95, 99%.
Are going to be buggy. This is not a game. We've always continually said that it's going to be a testing phase.
Let's go.
But with that, we still want it to be a decent experience for those of you who join us. And because of this amazing technology that these guys have been working on, we can now service more users, which means that we will be opening up Alpha 2 key access sales in the near future as we get closer to Alpha 2 or along with Alpha 2. So kind of stay tuned for that. We do want to make sure that folks are aware of that, but some caveats. These will not be pre-order packs. These will be key access. So these will be, you know, to access the product once it's available. And then of course the pricing is still TBD, but we're going to try to make sure it's fair as possible, especially for those of you who have already purchased packages. We understand that you're like, hey, I purchased a package. We want to make sure that price is
don't give a shit.
So
there's going to be people that are going to be pissed about that. Do not care.
Back and forth, and we'll
get
make
more
sure
people
that
in.
It is fair for you guys.
And they will not be.
Get more people.
We do release the access to. They will not be additional rotating cosmetics either. So these will be static key access that players will have an opportunity to purchase in and access Alpha 2 and participate, because ultimately Alpha 2's purpose is to test the game. And more players testing the game is better. We wanted, as Margaret said, be sure that the tech that we are utilizing
especially now they got the server stressing shit that they need to figure out.
They got to make sure they got people. And by the way, watching the commentary, watching the feedback,
there's going to be people that are going to bitch and moan and say that the
discussion was interesting. There's a lot of people who I didn't expect were going to be really interested in the conversation. And it seemed like, you know, I was watching the viewership was staying still around, you know, what it was. I was like, okay, this is better than I expected.
We knew not everybody's going to be interested, and
it doesn't have to be entertaining. It just has to be useful information.
Like we've made it very clear that this is what.
Like I said, we need to know this shit
for like a month
when we're playing.
So hopefully everyone
if there's ever a hiccup or an issue or a server goes down, I can't be like, did you guys crash too? Did you guys crash too? Get in Discord, I'm like, did you guys all crash too? It's like, no, I know you didn't, because I crashed in my server, not in yours.
But also I wanted to
obviously that's a minor thing, but you get my point. It's like information, understanding. It's good.
If you already purchased a pre-order pack, those upgrades are still available.
I mean, people are still going to do that, but that's besides the point.
Away. At some point, obviously, Alpha 2 keys will go away, and of course, those upgrade packs will go away, but those will be closer to the end of Alpha 2. And Alpha 2 is meant to be a much longer running.
Hey, that means maybe Tree can get in, and I can actually have some boys at my back.
Coming frequently for those.
Because having someone help me test out the classes for the
in the persistence wise of
which I'll talk more about at the end of stream for anyone that's watching the VOD and you're somehow at this point.
Of what persistence
I'll have some more information
that
maybe
go down,
important to you.
So that we can do updates. So
eventually,
that we can
if you're
check
new
things and make sure things are good.
Watching this,
our goal is
watching
to not have to wipe, but obviously if there are situations where we have to, we will do that. But persistency is the main goal for us. We want to get all that data that we possibly can when it comes to persistence.
Absolutely.
That's not it. We also have another announcement of an announcement.
Another announcement.
Another.
I think people will like this one though. That's
yeah,
okay.
You think so? I think some people will like it and some people won't. So We are also going to start expanding our NDA testing. Obviously, we've been working with PI. You guys have known that. We've kept them pretty NDA'd. We did uncover the vocal NDA in regards to the node war spot testing. But obviously, we're doing other testing.
And by the way, that's been a lot of fun to watch. And I'm very encouraged to continue doing that as part of additional testing going forward, because it's been great to see our test
Some
groups
of the
go
PI
out
guys
and sit
are
on
really
different
short
content
and
creators platforms and talk about what their experiences
I've watched
were,
a couple of
and
them. And it's
allow,
like, bro,
you know,
chill,
more
shit.
than just us as an interface.
Like, you didn't have to come on and talk.
What development is looking like right now, what the game state is looking like right now.
But some of it's been really cool,
I'm very
too.
encouraged by those interactions. I think we have a phenomenal content creator team group out there that is following the game, who are, you know, servicing a lot of different viewers and communities who want to learn about what's happening. They have great channels to go to and do that, and you guys are choosing great guests and having really good conversations. So kudos to you guys.
As a tangent,
I'm hoping
because you brought that
through
up,
Alpha 2, I will get to join that crowd.
We are
maybe.
going to be putting up a role for content creator relations manager.
We'll see if I have the energy in me
role,
to do it. But
starting
I'm hoping
to see some of those that program starting to come online. So just, you know, that's very exciting for us. We have so many applicants who have come in, and one of the things that Stephen and I had discussed is that we really want our content creator program to be a very interactive thing. You are part of like our family, so we want to help you. You help us. You know,
Alpha 2 doesn't have an NDA.
Like a program that you've seen before,
unless they added one after the fact. But I'm pretty certain it does not.
Outline of what that program looks like, and a lot of people are pretty excited about it. But you know, the bigger you grow, the bigger we grow. So we want to help you just as much as you help us.
I've kept NDAs before.
All jokes aside. Just big content creators.
I've done a lot of beta and alpha testing over the years.
Who are consistent.
Since I was like a young kid,
you could have 200 followers. You could have 200,000. So it just to us, that's not what we're looking for.
I guess because of that, I kind of take it seriously.
All your content. We're looking.
Like I really do like providing feedback.
Which is very time consuming, and we've already started
writing up reports and things like that. Like I'm effectively like a for free QA tester.
Help us manage it, because it's going to be a full-time job. We might need more people than just one. But to go back to the announcement of the announcement, we obviously have PI joining us and testing, but we need more testers. So we are going to be starting to expand that. We're going to do a slow roll of what that expansion looks like. And so,
hey, Steven, I know you come around and look at shit up front every once in a while. This stands up in front of your face, man.
Now, how we're going to take that, I know that's going to be a big...
Since I was like 8 years old, I've been fucking basically being a free QA tester, man. I got you.
So the first thing that we want to do is for this first round, we're going to add the top 500 from the Alpha 1 contributors. So that is looking at people who actually participated in game in Alpha 1. We're going to be grabbing those users, and then we're going to have another 500 that will be randomly chosen. And you guys will all be emailed. The goal is to email you within this July timeframe, and you'll be joining us in testing like soon.
And this is you know, this approach of invitation to randomize but also activity. Like, we know all the people who participated in Alpha 1, what they did, the statistics around how often they played, what level they got to, the amount of time that they played. And the detail they spent in their forum accounts and their notes and response, like, those are our dedicated testers from the Alpha 1 group. So we want to give them a first stab. Exactly. We want them we want them back first stab as we begin to expand outside of the P1 group. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Outside of the
I wish I was more active on the forums. I try to be sometimes.
Into Alpha 1 testers over the month of July and then into August as we expand.
The last time I was like really trying to engage in the conversation.
All of the Alpha 1
I just ended up kind of like hitting like part of the echo chamber, and
so
I didn't agree with them, and so I kind of got bitched out
in the first stages.
And that doesn't feel good.
Ensuring that, you know, we give you guys a decent experience as we move forward, and that's
obviously that's not Intrepid's fault. There's nothing wrong with them or Ash's.
Not to say that we won't have some client performance issues.
It's always going to happen
or whatnot, but like we are going to be testing a lot of bigger pieces, and we're for a little longer test runs.
Actually, one of the mods reached out to me to help me out with something.
There may be cases where we
unlock
really cool. Some of that.
I was just going to concede on it and not worry about it.
We might unlock
really cool.
images that people take, like screenshots.
Cool team they got.
We let them screenshot, but only within our like private channels. Obviously not externally. But yeah, so we're excited. We're excited to expand
very
the
exciting
testing.
News.
Yeah,
very exciting.
And you know, obviously, I know that runs into folks asking other things about Alpha 2, but I will let Brian talk a little bit about that when he goes into Studio Update. I do have some questions that we do want to answer in regards to server meshing technology. So I'm going to reel us back in, but that was relevant to it.
I'll try my best. I am cracking my technical brain skills. Let's go.
I think Brian said earlier, he was like,
Steven hasn't been coughing very much this stream.
Watching that.
Yeah, I did.
Fuck, I had to say something, man.
So
I fucking jinxed it.
Is, what is your plan and what systems are in place to avoid the first few months of server queues, congestion, and when players drop off? How do you plan on handling that if/when the time comes?
Sure. That I think that obviously is a problem that every MMO launch suffers, right? I mean, that is, the balance between your active users, your expected peak concurrencies, right? Where that fall off begins and how you consolidate servers. You don't want to expand too much at the beginning to alleviate server queues and then end up with like 30% pop servers that you have to consolidate later. The same is going to be true for Alpha 2, right? And so we're going to be leveraging, obviously, we know how many users we have available when it comes to Alpha 2 entrance. And then as we allow additional people to purchase in with these new key sales that we'll be doing later, we're going to get an idea of what that is. Generally, I would expect we're going to see 30 to 40% peak concurrencies when it comes to like opening the servers, when it comes to prime time, when it comes to events that happen, right? And so when we talk about server queuing and the server congestion, we want to make sure that we have healthy Alpha 2 servers. So we're going to leverage server queuing as much as possible. That means that sometime those server queues might get into the thousands during those peak times, during the servers spinning up or during those prime times or events. And that's okay. It's not going to be the most fun for a lot of players to have to sit in a queue. Obviously, we've all done that before in MMOs that we played. But the alternative is that we have too many servers available. We don't have those queues during peak times. And then when it's not peak times, those server populations dilapidate. And that's not what we want to have, obviously.
We'll have live operations watching those, making sure we're looking at the health of our realms. For this case, we'll say realms because servers mean a different thing and it can get confusing. So we'll make sure that we have enough realms to accommodate for the users that we expect.
And we are able to spin up new realms at a moment's notice, right? So as we watch, well,
not at a snap of the finger,
at a DevOps moment's notice. Yeah.
I just want to, I want to say that because like when we said it before, the guys were like, they're like, we can do it quickly, but not like a snap.
And I mean, generally you have a new realm on standby, right? That's spooled up and ready to go, and you need to pull the trigger on it or not.
We just don't unlock the tags for you guys to be able to get in. So we have those ready. We just don't unlock them for you, but it's easy for us to do.
That's good to hear.
And the next one here is there a higher likelihood for bugs or server hiccups near the edges of servers? And during testing of this meshing, have there been issues surrounding item duplication, server, hiccups back and forth between travel on these server borders? So like a lot of people had questions regarding this because people are worried about speed hackers and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, around these borders, and especially early on, as we rolled out this multi-grid formation, we're looking for bugs when it comes to server authority transfers, when it comes to these proxies across boundaries, all those types of things. However, these days, not so much, right? Because we've been spending the last 9-10 months or so the networking team around identifying those bugs across border issues.
We started with a 1x1, and then we did a 2x2, 3x2, 4x3. So like we've been scaling it up and testing, and we found bugs before.
That's right. But what you say about as we kind of enter into Alpha 2 and as we continue to expand our testing to include now additional real clients, that is where the networking team obviously focuses on. They watch those things, they get reports and profiles around where those errors can occur, and they address them as necessary.
All right. The next one is, does Intrepid currently have a plan on how to accomplish dynamic gridding, or is it just we want it but don't know how? We talked about it. So
right now dynamic gridding is in place. Right now what we are doing is we are optimizing, fixing performance around that. the current goal, which is on target, is that dynamic gridding will be online by the start of Alpha 2. So, all of our tech was built to get to the point where we can do dynamic gridding. This has always been the end.
I mean, they already kind of said both of these
dynamic
things.
gridding is still in active development right now, but
like
the plan is that by Alpha 2 entrance criteria, we will have dynamic gridding in a bug sturdy place
it's good,
that is
it's
optimized
good to reiterate.
and working.
I think
right.
I'm excited to stress test the shit out of it.
How does the longevity of servers speak to the relevancy problem? It is eventually going to be non-financially viable, in this person's opinion, to maintain that amount of server farm space to keep the performance optimal. I had to put that in there because I just,
yeah. I mean, when you talk about infrastructure, right? There's a duality in modern day times between what's available in the cloud, and there's business relationships that get formed between cloud providers like an AWS or a GCP, where you can have reserved instances available. You want to optimize your server types and machine configurations that are necessary so that costs are not prohibitive against the number of expected users per instance that it can facilitate. And we run all of those.
I mean,
projections.
It's standard. I used to play Blue
regularly that we are optimizing also the types of machine uses that we require, and that's from a cloud perspective. Now, when it comes to testing, in Commander, especially I would always for play Alpha 2, we'll be heavily leveraging cloud instances in order to provide the types of
I think I've played White Black
that
before
we require
too.
because it's easily
I didn't like that as
and we
much
can flex into that relatively
definitely
in
red
on-demand fashion. However, as we move towards a proper launch scenario, we will have bare metal that we service ourselves.
I've never played
from a
Blue
service
Red
center
before,
perspective,
though, so I don't know
that we utilize and still have the ability to flex into the cloud when we need to flex for numbers that we didn't account for popularity we didn't account for. That is the finesse of these types of systems, and how we are agnostic of whether or not we deploy our clusters in a bare metal service or in the cloud, where we can do either or. So for us, everything we do to calculate cost per user is associated with how we're optimizing for the types of instances that we can use. And for Alpha 2, that's looking pretty good.
Yeah. So we're not concerned on the financial side of things. I think everyone always asks those type of questions, but I figure making sure
they're
that
great questions.
Yeah, because a lot of people.
Well, everyone wants to know if the game's gonna fucking hit the dirt.
We talk about this stuff regularly,
right? I know.
Yeah.
Brian and I,
you gotta make sure
it's stable.
It's a good question, even if the answer is always going to be yes, we're fine.
Every day almost. Absolutely.
Because not everyone knows.
To do. I mean, I think similarly to the tech side of things, the financial side of stuff, people, it's not the stuff that you get to see a lot of, right? So, and we've been pretty transparent about where we're at, what we're doing, how we're moving forward in regards to that.
Now, don't get me wrong. Let me give some context here, because I think it's interesting for those who in the audience who enjoy more of the business side of things. There have been times in the past,
I'm an
company and other companies do this, where running a test is exorbitantly costful, right? However, you need to take that bite in order to collect certain information, even if you're not in a state where you're fully optimized, in order for that to be long-term sustainable. We've done that in the past, and we knew the price we were paying in order to do that. Alpha 2 is not one of those scenarios.
Let's go Drowsy Summer.
Just to be clear.
All right, and of course, that was our.
The joke is that I do not play colors.
The video for that will be uploaded after
I am not,
the end
in
of this
fact,
live stream,
colorless.
so you can go check it out, relive it, go back to where you want, read things, look at stuff, because I know there were people who were peeking at some assets and stuff like that they were excited about when we were showcasing 3D models in there. But of course, we do have a feedback thread up over.
Yeah, I was going to say I don't think they're really colorless anymore either.
Or questions or
they're still kind of.
Answers to some of the questions that Stephen had asked both in there and then before we started the segment. Feel free to head on over there and give us your thoughts. We are constantly reading those. We're putting reports together for our dev team. And if we see any additional questions that we feel need to be answered, we'll make sure that we get those answered in future updates. And with that, I'm going to hand it actually over to Langford to do our studio update.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I did feel smarter after watching that. It was incredible. And Stephen, you're right. I think I might go try to get my engineering degree now.
There you go. That's what I'm saying. I'm curious how many people, are interested in that, don't have the opportunity to associate.
Here's the thing. Are you interested? Post a 1 in chat. If you're live on Twitch, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can put a little 1 emoji in your comment.
But it's one thing to listen to a lecture, to take a class, or to
I didn't want to flashbang anybody with my
where the
tabs,
substance
like
of the conversation is related to particular knowledge you want to gain. It's another thing to have the substance
all at once,
also the interest of the project coupled. Right, like it's
great
to be, I think, a fan who's interested in the tech side of this, or who's a software developer, or
get everything together.
Working in Unreal and trying to build their first game or whatever, following a project they care about from a gamer's perspective, and now get to couple that with their interest from a technology perspective.
I promise, it flashbang me just as hard.
Just putting that out there, But go ahead, Langford.
Oh no, that's cool. Yeah,
because you got to go cover.
Yeah, I do have a list of things I'd like to cover, but hiring's on that. So what they said in the video today was that the stuff is going to be, and as Stephen recapped, the stuff's going to be available coming to Alpha 2 for the dynamic gridding stuff. And I think the first thing to note is that the studio in general, the fires of production are hot.
Yes.
There's the plumes of smoke are rising from the forges, and we are definitely speeding towards Alpha 2. So just to reiterate, I think off of what we said last live stream, we are still entirely confident in our plan for a Q3 Alpha 2.
That's right.
Okay.
And we're planning to
announce probably late.
A date.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, go for it.
We're not quite ready to put the date out there yet, but I think by next live stream. I think by next live stream, I'll have enough road mapping done with the team, and we'll know for sure.
Yeah, the end of this month, expect to get a date for A2 start. And actually, from a production standpoint, many people, obviously don't know. We've talked in the past about how production runs, but we just finished a major milestone.
Yep. Yes, we did. We talked about that a little last time too. Milestone 9.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to give some stats on it.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, cool. So we did. We just finished milestone 9. So as a company, I don't know how familiar the audience is with our Scrum stuff and what story points really means, but we completed 8,900 story points. That's like a measure of time and risk, and that's quite a vast number to complete in a milestone. We were about 89% successful to our own estimations, which is pretty darn good. But of course, anything that can get in the way does, and we have meetings every day to look at disruptors and top 5 criticals and blockers and stuff like that.
And just to give context, 89% delivery on the product goals for a particular milestone, given that a milestone is looking out roughly 3 months ahead, is pretty darn good, right? And people might wonder, well, why wasn't it 100%, right? The things that can happen during a milestone, whether it be, emergent work that was unexpected, that might be Sev-Zero work for, build breakers or test blockers,
memory crash or something
memory stomps or crashes, right? Discovery of new work or estimations didn't take into account like unknowns within a particular piece of code. Like all of those can come in to kind of disrupt what an end goal is for delivery on a milestone, and 89% is pretty up there.
Yeah, I was really quite proud of the team. It was really good. And bugs, right? Squash them. So that was kind of how far we got along in milestone 9. We're about to kick off our milestone 10 here.
Technically it starts today.
Yeah, we have a town hall in about 2 hours.
Yeah,
that's
an hour and a half.
That's right. So we're I think we've already identified some of this stuff too, but we're going to continue looking at polishing for our VFX and our UI elements. We're going to continue looking at the golden path, which we play test regularly, or I think as last month you called it, Stephen, the golden on fire lava ridden tree.
Yeah, that's right.
But we're continuing to play test on a regular basis with that stuff, trying to make sure that it does have a good experience for the player. We are really player
we already knew, but
in what we're trying to accomplish, even though I know
there's so many games out there where the devs don't actually play the fucking game.
Yeah.
But it is something that we're trying very hard.
And usually that's in reference to it being after it's released. But
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say another huge thing, which I know you're probably about to get to, is we had a 15% staffing growth over the last quarter.
Steven's excited. Indeed. He's taking all of Brian's.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm just excited. I think what
I am too.
Yeah,
I think we've hired more so far this year than we did in all of last. Like it's been an incredible growth journey for this company. I was going to mention a couple other things. We're hammering on economy. We've got our features and gameplay stuff are looking great. We got more to go. We're working on material components.
Elder 2 is going to release more fucking complete than like 90% of the goddamn MMOs on the goddamn market right now,
wrapping
dude.
It
and
up
it's going to
be
be
getting ready for letting you.
It's
going
to
be
be
what
sad.
That date is.
All right.
It's going to be a sad thing. It's going to be great to play Ashes.
Update.
Ashes will be fine. Nothing wrong with that.
This is a long
It'll be
stream,
sad
so thank
to
you
go
all
back
for
to
so
fucking
much
anything else.
For sticking with us.
That's one of my biggest fears for Alpha 2 is that it's just better than anything fucking else I have access to.
You took
at least in its genre of MMO. Obviously, it's not going to like
also, I think people
compete
are
with
really excited. We can leak
whatever,
perhaps what's coming up this month because it's in stone, isn't it?
Damn it.
Margaret just gave me the side eye.
You mean like what the content is that we're going to
cover?
Yeah. We've already talked about it, but you go.
Oh,
go
good.
For it,
okay, yeah. This month you guys are going to be seeing for the first time at the end of July the Bard archetype, and
I thought you were talking about something
else.
else.
She did allude to it earlier.
Shoot, my bad.
No, Bard is I think
Bard is up and coming. I did tease that a little bit.
Yeah.
I did tease that.
Or did he? One of them did
earlier in the stream too. But
yes.
Maybe we can get Steven to play a guitar for us on stream.
I'm down.
Heck yeah! Get him a lute.
Yes.
I'm
ready.
All right. We'll just go through some art here really quickly.
We're gonna play Rogue Bard.
We've got these amazing silken web hand wraps
Ranger
that
Bard.
were made by Chris.
Go back to my roots, my arcade roots.
Studded leather belt, studded silver.
Actually, that's
belt,
a lie. My arcade
leather.
roots was
it's the upgrade from the
probably closer to Ranger Rogue, but still.
This is still a work in progress, I believe, but you kind of get to see some of it. And then this is the Grove Guard helmet.
Love that.
See, that looks cool from a thematic standpoint. Creepy. I couldn't see myself putting that on my character.
And then we have the robe of the financier.
I just can't.
Financier?
That looks. No, that's something I might put on my character.
Financier.
Financier.
I like that.
Very rich.
Yes.
I am
in there.
very into noble attire shit, though. So
yeah, those were by Danny, the helmet and the robe, and then Jinsey worked.
Actually, I think my most picked background archetype. That's really good looking.
He wants.
I want that
version of this with the hood up.
The hood up. Yeah.
But it's.
I want to have the ratty urchin rogue look
this awesome
going.
Bat. I love it. It's like a bullfrog and a bat together. I'm so into.
Have my rich attire and then my
cool.
my poor orphan attire. Ooh.
It's not a little neck.
I need it.
And then the last one here is the Rosarium Guard.
Yeah.
I think I
don't really like armor design
for this one as well.
A lot of the times.
Uncomfortable.
So that's just not for me.
It looks uncomfortable.
Yeah, I've been watching. I was watching House of Dragons, and they had some really good armor in this last episode, and it moved really well with. The
I like
shoulders,
both, man. I like both.
I don't know if I can move that well now.
It's got the built-in
rags and riches,
I
man.
know, the beard
not two riches, but rags and riches.
Is awful. As a cosplayer, I have made so many pieces of armor. One of the things that I've learned is you always want to put fur underneath there or cushions because anywhere where you're moving your joints, it's
not quite.
Really
not quite that.
Yeah, leather.
Not quite. Not
if
quite
you're
that.
wearing heavy armor, it's if you're making it out of foam and stuff, it's not as bad.
He's rich in rags.
And that is our art update. So
beautiful.
Into the last segment here, and I'll just play some of the slides in the background so you have something visual to look at whilst we go through our Q&A.
But no, I like that
And the first one here is from Phantom
tattered,
X,
torn clothing look that just
I thought it was Phantom X.
But not from an adventurer standpoint,
I'm just
clothing in disrepair from use.
X one time and he didn't hear the end of it. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Wagner put it in quotes, Phantom X, to make it clear, to make sure.
Okay.
But Phantom, you can let us know how you prefer it, or maybe Steven
will
just keep trolling
Phantom
you.
X. I'm just
mix it in with a bit of leather armor here and there. mix it in with like a little bit of like pouch.
We know that
non-citizens
can complete
disarray in the design of the outfit, so that they kind of like
will start a node war.
gives it like a confusing look when the character goes to do things. Sometimes
the commission required to start a war, even if citizens deliberately don't complete them.
But in the inverse, when I play D&D, like 9 times out of 10, I play a noble.
On a design side, it can go either way.
And I like to be extravagant and spend money on shit that does not matter.
Or non-citizen.
I like kind of reverse power game, buy like jewelry and rich fucking clothing, buy a fucking carriage and a butler. You know,
that we will expect only citizen participation.
I like both extremes, I guess is where I'm going with that one.
It's something that obviously we're going to be testing in A2.
And then Castai wants to know about threat generation. Of taunts, heals, and damage done, each of equal output performed against enemy mobs, will they all generate a 1-to-1-to-1 ratio of threat generation, or will one of those 3 be slightly better or worse than the other 2 at producing hate?
What?
Right now, the formula includes modifiers, so we can apply a modifier as we wish to either healing values versus
I see what they okay.
Hate values. Those things are going to just kind of be balanced as we kind of see playtesting continue.
I mean, I figured to go tank, healer, DPS, right? That's usually how games handle it.
Healer not pulling it too often and the DPS not grabbing it as well. So we want to have maximum flexibility in the formula, and that's why
you want healers and DPS to be able to grab it.
And then Kadak wants to know about open sea content. Will there be points of interest such as underwater dungeons that will also remain outside of the
because otherwise then threat doesn't matter. It's literally just a mechanic. That's there to fuck with you if you don't have a tank, right?
Right now,
but the tank should have it most of the time.
Those will remain contested. And in the event where we do not want to have, let's say certain content contested, we would likely have some type of doorway or shared instance opening that players then can move into where it is an uncontested
underwater bubble.
Exactly.
Chronix wants to know about UI and UX tools. What tools can we expect for shot callers regarding marks and pings? This is a big one that we've gotten asked a lot about.
I kind of hope there isn't any.
Maximum tools, because the people making this game want the exact same thing you do.
I think I brought this up in Pult the other day. I was like, I know we have a lot on our plate.
Like, I don't want to have like the 14 or WoW,
that is on
beacon pings with like marking above heads and stuff. I feel like that gets really muddy.
To entrance, so
and it's unnecessary.
I know they have
Guild Wars 2 World has proven that it's just largely unnecessary.
Absolutely.
Give us the one pin on the leader, and that's all we need.
Our next comment here is from Top Wombat, which I love that name. Server, they want to know about server tech, which is very.
I mean, it's not a deal breaker for me, but I prefer it to be minimal, not maximum.
Players in an area.
So yeah, that's the spawner system. The spawner system has a number of ways that it can respawn. This is it can be a set value that's time based. It can be predicated on monster count. So as monster count drops beneath a threshold, the spawner will spawn additional monsters. The world designers have all that flexibility at their disposal. It just kind of depends on the area, the quest type that the mob is servicing. We have all of that functionality, and it just, it's something we're going to be testing.
All right.
Okay.
And then Zilfarth wants to know about Character Creator. Will we be able to upload an image into the Character Creator and have it render that character for us? We've had a lot of people asking this, actually.
Yeah, not for Alpha 2, but it is something that I know Clayton is excited about trying. And it is something that we're going to discuss as a feature for the Character Creator post A2 launch, but not for the entrance of A2.
And since we're talking about Character Creator, we did have a lot of people asking, like, when will we get access to Character Creator? Because we have said
close.
The goal is to put that out before Alpha 2 so people can get their hands on it.
It is getting close. I just
we'll fuck around with that on stream if I'm allowed.
The Character Creator for the stable environment, which is basically as you create your characters.
Yeah.
It's looking pretty
good.
Looking
good, yeah.
We need to get it over the finish line on the outstanding polish work that's necessary there.
You can make some whack characters right now.
Yes, it's getting close.
I think you could, like, at one point we were able to
Arc Survival Evolved or BDO? Where are we going with this?
It was like a little bit of a mess, but they're fixing it. They're working on it. Snow Elf wants to know about server meshing tech. Will server meshing have any impact on the world bosses or events? And is there any potential chance for exploitation from the player base in bypassing the spawn
yes,
timers
there
we have
is
this concept.
No, I wouldn't say there's really any correlation between, exploiting or respawn timers. Will it have any implications for boss tech? Absolutely. I mean, as we just observed, right, when you talk about certain emergent behaviors, whether it be raids
maybe I
coming
misunderstood the
together to
question, but
contest
there
a
will be
particular
room for
boss fight,
exploitation with it.
the server meshing tech, along with
Whether
our
or not it'll be
dynamic
reasonable
gridding,
or feasible is one
going to be
thing, but
capable of essentially
everything
you know
in a game
reducing
has
the
that
scope of
potential.
a particular server's authority and spinning up new servers to add to the grid to facilitate that high player density, right? That's one of the benefits that server meshing tech and what the networking team has been working on helps to facilitate as our design goals, which is high player density. So yes,
Which
it
world
benefits it.
bosses bring.
Absolutely. So
And
to
that's
answer
fair.
that question,
That makes
yes,
sense.
there are going to be benefits there. That's what A2 entrance will contain as part of our networking technology. That's what our networking teams have been working on for the past several years.
But no to the exploitation part of that.
No, no, there's not really any considerations from a server meshing technology standpoint that would assist in exploitation or problems there. Obviously,
maybe
like
not specifically
any
for
networking
that, but
blade,
I think
there
in
are
general it
bugs
probably
that we need to
could,
hammer
right? I
out.
mean, the
There's
potential
going to
has to be there.
issues that testing will give us insight to, but that
I mean, I
would be the
trust
same.
them. They want to test
giving
it,
us
so I don't think
data
he's
on it.
saying that they
It's
won't
been
look
great
into it.
having testers.
But I think there is potential.
Tyranthraxis wants to know about Underrealm content. Will there be underwater content in the Underrealm parts of the game?
Yeah, Underrealm will have water associated with it, and there may be areas where we we leverage underwater content as either a means of traversal to reach certain locations, or require use of certain vehicle types in order to traverse.
And our penultimate
or mounts.
question is from Roni Scaponi. I always love saying their name. Profession choices. Will your own profession have any effect besides a social one on which tradable recipes and blueprints you obtain? I talked to Vacna a little bit more about this, and I think the example here is, will I still obtain and loot recipes that are not my own profession, and can I trade these with others?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. It is
I hope there is no skewing.
The concept here is that
to promote more economy and trading.
Yourself per se. Other people.
I mean, I don't think there will be, but
you can excel in a different area in order to make trades with them, in order to purchase from them. That is the basis of a healthy economy.
Yeah, we want you guys to be trading things and needing things from other people. That's the whole point of an MMO.
Yeah, exactly.
And then our final question here is from Lashing, wanting to know about stamina modification. Will there be specific stats on gear outside of set bonuses that modify or interact with stamina, such as increased maximum stamina, stamina regeneration, or stamina gain on basic attack hits?
Yeah, so first and foremost, stamina is a waterfall, which means it does get influenced by certain core ability stats. However, in addition to that trickle-down benefit that will come from certain set bonuses that might modify constitution, which could increase, regeneration rate of stamina, you will also have independent one-off stamina benefits like, 10% stamina regen. That is just a set bonus, or 15% higher stamina value cap, that gets applied to certain sets and or armors and buffs as well.
And that wraps us up for our June development update. Again, thank you all so much for sticking with us. As final reminders, head on over to our forums, leave us your feedback, forums.ashesofcreation.com. And of course, we will be opening up A2 key sales as we get closer to Alpha 2. So stay tuned for that.
That's good. I hope they're reasonably priced, especially if they're only Alpha 2.
So for those of you who do get access in, we will be emailing you sometime this month.
And if they are cheap enough, maybe I'll buy some for the boys.
Under NDA testing, so you can't talk about it. It's like, Fight Club. But
if not, I'll just promote them.
And we'll be expanding that to all of our A1 users as we move forward. Thank you to the wonderful server technology. So big, huge shout out to Zach, Hunter, Anton for putting together an amazing presentation and walking us through some big brain stuff. But
not a whole lot for me to really
for you guys.
Comment on or react to, unfortunately. At least they're only Search Showcase.
There's going to be a lot of gameplay next month. So, or not next month, this month, later this month.
Later this month.
So you won't miss out on that.
For just this moment, it's still June.
And of course, thank you to Brian and Steven for joining us. And we'll have the video up over on YouTube really in a moment here, so stay tuned for that. We'll post it on all of our social channels.
I think this was a very necessary showcase.
We're Ashes of Creation.
Not a very
places.
entertaining
We
one.
post at least like once or twice a day almost. We try to keep
but it was very
abreast
necessary
to what's going on. We ask a lot of questions of you. Sometimes they affect in-game. I think one time we asked you if you prefer B for bag or I for inventory, and we actually, based on the votes, we changed it in game. So there's a lot of things where,
tonight
you can just be part of the development process
11
and
my
follow along
time
with our journey.
Which I think is
note that the full development update video for this one won't be going out tomorrow.
7
It'll be going up July
PST?
5th because tomorrow's a holiday. I would like to not have to work, so we'll be pushing that to the 5th. And of course, if you want to be spotlighted on our next one, leave a comment there. Make sure you subscribe to our channel whenever that goes up on the 5th, and we will see you all later this month. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, that's fun.
Everybody clap.
Thanks, everybody. Bye. Bye.
And wave. Yeah, I'm gonna mute because unfortunately this is actually copyrighted music. But yeah, okay. So while this plays in the background, I mentioned earlier, gonna say for the VOD, and I guess for anyone who doesn't know, I don't know if I would say I'm very qualified to do guides for Ashes, or if Alpha 2 guides are even really going to be a necessary thing. But I want to try my hand at it, and I want to do overviews of the classes. Partly because I want to make sure that there's some truth to that. There's doubly some truth to that. And I want to overlook the classes. And part of the reason why is because I'm really wishy-washy with MMOs. A little bit of insight into me when it comes to MMOs. I can't decide a lot of the time. So like a good example of this would be like in Guild Wars 2. I tried to play Thief. I ended up fucking hating it. Mostly because they changed it partway through and I didn't like the way they changed it, but either way. I ended up not liking it as much. And then I ended up playing fucking Necromancer. I never play casters. I never play casters in any fucking video game I ever play. World of Warcraft. I thought because I played in a lot of dungeon crawlers, I like to play ranged characters. So I was like, oh, well, that's all I had to go on when I started playing WoW. So I played Hunter. Ended up fucking hating it. Played Death Knight. Ended up loving it. Although it was kind of busted back then. So, I mean, take that for what you will. You know, as an example. So I'm kind of fucking all over the place. Is the moral of the story. Because I ended up liking playing ranged actually, I like playing Mage eventually, but I played Archer in Arcage for a long time too. So like I'm all over the place, and the feel of what I like in an MMO class is it's odd, and I don't even I think I have an idea of how to pinpoint it now. I think I understand why. I won't get into that right now, but I think really the easiest way for me to figure that out when it comes to Ashes of Creation is to just fucking try them all, and why not record it and make videos out of it instead, you know, and I basically be informative. If I'm already going to be doing the legwork, why not share it with everybody? It's what I figure, right? Now, for those watching the VOD on YouTube, you'll know this is my only YouTube channel. And yes, I really am just uploading VODs. And yes, that is incredibly lazy of me. You're very correct. But I don't know. I'll try my hand at it. I have done editing in the past, so I kind of know what I'm doing. Probably won't be anything major or crazy. But the question is, will you ever heal? But also, that is how you become qualified. That's true. That's a good point. Yeah. Will I ever heal? I will test out Cleric. In this context, yes. I'll also test out Bard, and probably like if Summoner is as wacky and wild as it sounds like it's going to be, I'll try it out. I will go through the rounds. I can't promise I'll be very good at it. I am historically very bad at healing in MMOs. I can tank and I can DPS just fine. From like a figuring it out moment. I may not enjoy tanking very much usually, but I can do it. I should be okay in that regard. Yeah, that's actually kind of what I mentioned earlier, though. Is I was actually really excited. So, like, I anticipate if I go on Twitter right now, I'm going to see probably some dude in his 50s losing his shit with his caps lock on that they're selling alpha keys again. Don't care. Couldn't care in the least. It doesn't bother me any. Mostly because I can't expect Marth or Esprit or Hydro or Dream or GTA or Hells to really put that money down. $150 fucking dollars is a lot of fucking money. I get it, but if they're gonna sell specifically Alpha 2 key access, and let's say it's like $30, I can just buy a key or a couple of keys for people, and then all of a sudden I got some tester helpers. I got some I got some I can force them. I just hit my desk. Apologies on that. To help me out. Right? Right? You guys are monetarily indentured. That's a word. No, I think it's fine. I'm trying to become GTA. Yes, I'm gonna be GTA for a moment. Let's go. No, I'll make sure everyone. I won't just buy keys. I'll make sure if someone wants it and they can't or they're not entirely like certain if they're gonna like the game, I'm not gonna force people to put money down. But like Marth, for instance, he's interested in Ashes specifically. I know. I wouldn't mind buying him a key as long as it's not like. I mean, if it's gonna be like, oh, it's $100. Fuck that. I'm not even gonna recommend anyone do it. But I figure, if it's just Alpha 2, like specifically just Alpha 2, and it's not, sorry, and it's not access to the game later, or it's not beta 1 and 2, and it's not like other testing phases, I guess, long story short, and they only charge like $10-15, like I genuinely have no problem buying that for people. I realize that that's kind of annoying to buy, so I have genuinely no problem buying it for people. Buy for GTA. You're coming along whether you like it or not, boy. I genuinely think if he approached these kinds of games like he approaches Tarkov, he may actually find some enjoyment in them. The only difference is that the difference between this, like a game like this and Tarkov, is that there's a lot more grinding. There's a lot more time investment required. I think that might be the actual thing that would turn him off. I don't think he'd actually have as much of a problem with the PvP side of it as he thinks he would. Mind you, that's speculation. I don't know. It very much could be the turn off for him once he gets into one of these kinds of games, like Arcade is an example. Like it could be. I'm not saying it that I'm speculating when I say that, but I do think the time investment might be what would turn him off. I think more than anything, it might be. But if he was able to get over that hurdle, I think he could get some enjoyment into these games the same way he does Tarkov. I genuinely think so. But yeah, I guess the long and short, that's kind of my plans. I do have Alpha 2 access. Try to get some fucking class guides going, even if they're scuffed as fuck. I think we're missing Summoner and Rogue at launch, so it wouldn't even really be that many classes to go through right away. And I wouldn't even really be able to be thorough because if the classes aren't in, the archetypes probably won't be. So I'll probably have to like revisit them. I'll have to come up with what I should do is I should come up with a plan of action to go through the archetypes and stuff as well. I don't know how that's going to be in Alpha 2 yet. I'll try to do my best with what's available, I guess. But